There's no place to escape to.
This is the last podcast.
On the left. That's when the cannibalism started.
What was that?
Oh, God, let him go, Richie. Let him go, Richie. Space. Oh, God. This is like, there's a lot of sad information in this.
Yeah.
And I also,
great.
Unfortunately, too, I went on a full, like, I did this. It's almost old school in a way, where I was up to 3 o'clock in the morning on a straight up old school rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, on forums, was deep into forums.
It's not old school if you're not at a public library. You're looking at microfiche.
Looking at the microfiche. I'm talking about old school for me, man.
Oh.
It was good to feel it, though, to get back in the bones, get super paranoid, like when we did the MK Ultra episodes. But the thing is, guess what? What does it mean? It always leads back to MK Ultra in some way, shape, or form.
Every time.
Yeah.
It's CIA money, man. CIA fucking money, dude. That funny money, dude, which I make every week. And I want to say, again, before we start, thank you to the CIA for sponsoring me and my little psyop.
CIA.
Yeah, it is the Culinary Institute of America, but that's what we call it on the inside because I mean the Central Intelligence Agency. Yes, I am an op, but guess what? I only do it for the lulz.
Yeah, I went into a rabbit hole myself. I found a bunch of half-eaten carrots. Picky-ass rabbits.
Funny stuff.
Welcome to Last Podcast on the Left, everyone. Ben hanging out with Henry and Marcus.
Hi.
Marcus, something you'd like to say?
I do. I want to ask Henry, my God, are you an actual op, or are you just saying that you're an op to throw us off the trail? Or is this a double blind where you're an op, but you're saying you're not an op, but you're making a joke that you're an op, but you're really actually an op?
Quadruple op.
Questions.
Any
Questions
answers?
are being asked. Can someone ask the ocean a question?
I mean, I guess so.
Think about this. If we are all just mysterious entities floating through a polygon universe in which we are just representations of energies as our brains are operating systems that manage to sort of put together reality, what is even a question? What is even objective fact?
You know what I'd ask the ocean? Can I get a towel? All right, everyone. Here we go.
This is not going to be a struggle today.
Hey, could I get a towel? You made me all wet now. Could I get a towel? All right.
He couldn't have one. He couldn't have one if he wanted to.
Yeah, I went down a rabbit hole. A bunch of fucking half-eaten carrots, picky-ass rabbits.
God.
All right, everyone.
Oh, man. We are supposed to be professional. We have been doing this for so long.
Professional
Marcus
has
is
nothing to
40.
do with how good we are at content. Professionally means that it's monetized. So there you go.
I have now officially done this show for the entirety of my 30s.
Woo! Marcus is 40 years old, and what a great episode.
Thank you.
To honor his 40 years, probably going back to past trauma that all of us, that I know our listeners have experienced. So thank you so much for everyone who's listened to this series. And I know for many of you, it's brought up some difficult feelings, but we'll get through this together and beat these motherfuckers. All right, we're on the troubled teen industry, part 3, Joe Ricci and the murder of Martha Moxley.
Now, the troubled teen industry is obviously made up of cruel institutions that use violence and humiliation in a vain attempt to set teens on a path that's acceptable to their lazy and or gullible parents. But that begs the question as to what type of person finds these methods to be not only sustainable, but essential.
Assholes.
There you go. Would you rather have lazy parents or parents who are so far up your ass they could pick your nose from the inside? Because I watched South Park, Kenny's parents, horrible, but he got to do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
But then Butter's parents up his butthole, and he's deeply traumatized.
I feel like we could search for a middle. I feel like there's a way to maybe not do either of those.
You want to go with a Stan?
Yeah.
Randy.
You're Randy.
Randy's fine.
Well, Randy's a sexual pervert who looks at animal porn.
But again, that's on his time.
True.
Well, furthermore, since most of these schools are only loosely based on therapy programs originally intended for adults, stuff like Synanon, it begs the question as to what kind of person fills in the blanks with straitjackets, solitary confinement, and electric sauce.
An asshole.
Yes. Well, in some cases, these people were nothing more than grifters and copycats, the type who see a new regulation-free industry blossoming, and therefore they decide to throw their hat in the ring with no previous experience.
Kind of like how we mess with humans' minds, the U.S. government did for a period of time in the 1950s, and they found all these kind of applicable ways to make money off of it truly and then continue it going. It seems that that's a really, attractive thing, this idea of look, we're getting into the basement of a business that's all about fucking with human brains. And it is interesting to see a bunch of guys just go yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like they're finally given permission. You know, it's like people who really do look at humans as robots. They look at other people as not human. They're the only human that exists in this world. And so finally you have an actual job in which your entire job is to treat people like robots.
Yeah, dude, I watched one of those documentaries called Human Resources, which was one of those old school. It's an old school conspiracy head video that is on the left side versus the right side. And so you just get real deep into how Taylorism, making scientific management, led to all of this stuff. It is interesting, but it's a lot of technically that's business, but also it's profoundly cruel in the way they look at people as sort of moving autonomous parts, and then they just figured out how to do that again and again and again.
Yeah. Sounds like a half-eaten carrot to me.
Well, for an example of a grifter, look no further than the aforementioned Gail Palmer, whose rip-off wilderness program Summit Quest resulted in a tragic and needless death by dehydration just 2 months after Gail launched the venture. But when it comes to Elan, the cruelest of these schools, which we went into in depth in episode 1, it took a special mix of egomania, sociopathy, narcissism, neglect, drug abuse, and sadism to create their proverbial electric sauce.
It's that poo-poo shoot.
I don't like that at all.
I'm talking, of course, about the Elan School's co-founder, Joe Ricci.
I am not a criminal. I'm not a mobster. I'm not anything in this line. I'm just simply, I'm a principal. I'm an extreme principal.
I hate to stereotype, but you sound like a criminal and a mobster.
No. Oh, what do you mean? No. You mean to say there's some kind of criminal accent
that
one can have? You racist?
No, I'm not. It's more of
I wear tracksuits.
Yeah.
And I got this chain, right?
Yeah.
And I drive a Rolls Royce, but I deal in the business of screaming children. So you'd be like, oh, he must be a criminal. But no, I'm running for governor.
Well, that wouldn't necessarily stop you from being a criminal.
Criminals, no, never politicians.
No, that wouldn't work out. How do you say mozzarella?
Mozzarella.
Okay, you might be a criminal.
Well, Joe Ricci was a native of Port Chester, New York, located just north of New York City.
Nice.
Raised by his maternal grandparents, Joe's father was an alcoholic nicknamed Bamboo because he could bounce back from any punch, and he was locally known as the kingpin of bar fights.
I certainly wish he was known as the kingpin of good fathers.
Yeah, that would have been nice. Maybe you wouldn't be such a criminal.
I don't know, honestly. I think it might just be in my very nature.
Yeah, you got some chicken parm on your face there.
I'm saving that.
Yeah.
Well, as far as little Joe's nickname went, he was called Joe Rich because he was tough, sharp, and able to get himself out of any sticky situation, which is a skill that would serve him well later in life. Additionally, Joe Ricci was a vindictive little fuck. And if you ever crossed him, he'd never let you forget it. That would also serve him for the rest of his life.
Great.
It's that is a common trait amongst cult leaders, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Mm-hmm. Now, when Joe was 15, in the year 1961, he got into a car accident with 3 friends and got thrown from the vehicle. He spent months in the hospital learning to walk again, but after Joe recovered, he allegedly self-medicated with heroin.
I mean, that's a real cool way to do it. It's very jazz.
Yeah, well, let's see if he learned how to play any musical instruments. Also, I think the only cult leader that actually would forgive is Charles Manson. I feel like he let a lot of stuff slide, but the things he didn't were like a big deal.
Well, it's because he didn't have an eye for detail.
Right.
Well, pretty soon, Joe Ricci was sent to a residential treatment facility for persons in need of supervision. It's pretty much an early version of a troubled teen facility.
Welcome to Peepholes. Now, what you'll see here is every single painting. Those are not eyes.
Not a one.
They'll be looking at you.
I purposely, when I went to art school to make art, to put on the hallways of this incredibly restrictive teaching environment, I just said peepholes. I don't even know how to draw a pupil.
I've been the janitor of Peepholes for 15 years, and I have never seen so much cum.
Well, Joe spent 2 years in this facility, and he returned to high school in 1963. But since Joe was 2 years older than everyone, he dropped out in 1966 at the age of 21.
Dropping out of high school at 21 is like renouncing your citizenship to Atlantis.
He's like that quarterback who just won the championship for Georgia. He's like 48, and he's just like beating all these kids.
Yeah. Well, still supposedly struggling with heroin addiction, Ricci reluctantly entered a residential drug and alcohol program called Daytop Village in Manhattan after he got caught robbing a mail truck.
That's where you go kick a drug habit. 1970s Manhattan.
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe Oklahoma would have been better.
Well, interestingly, Daytop was founded by a Synanon graduate named Ron Boncato.
Man, Synanon is just everywhere. That's why we covered it last week, because you really see just how it really spread and how the pain kept spreading.
Yeah. And I think this is probably, I don't know this for certain, but it seems like this is probably when Joe Ricci first learned about the game. And of course, he would use that to great harm later on at Elan.
Without Synanon, none of this stuff happens. Or at least it happens differently.
It happens differently. It's I would say without Synanon, it's not as psychologically traumatizing, but boot camps and shit like that.
Sure.
Torture has been used as a motivator for better behavior since the beginning of time.
Doesn't work on the Iranian soccer team.
Nope.
Whoa, that's a dig.
They lost.
That's sad. No, there was a couple. There's a guy named Dr. Arnold Hutschnecker he worked under the Nixon administration, and he literally wanted to create what he called, it's not a concentration camp, but it was like a place where a bunch of kids could concentrate, right? They could be in this place all in one and be forced to do it with a bunch of and basically it was a way for them to handle troubled kids. And that was floated to Richard Nixon. And he, in his wisdom, said no for a short period of time. But it did seem to not die there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this shit's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And behaviorism, that's the other thing I learned from human. You just talk about the BF.
Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Trying to create a utopia of just machine people has been a thing that we've been honestly like hoping for and working for a long time.
Half-eaten carrots.
Well, additionally, Daytop Village, that was where Nancy Reagan was first made aware of the youth drug epidemic in the 80s. Her visit to Daytop Village is widely credited to be the genesis of the Just Say No program.
That's great.
Absolutely. That's just what Ronald Reagan used to say when she used to slip off them peonies.
Oh, I think Ronnie said, she was quite attractive back in the day.
Nancy Reagan.
Oh, yeah. They used to call her like Golden Throat or something. She boned all the guys in Hollywood.
He's been lonely since Vegas.
No, this is true. Yeah.
Golden Throat, huh?
Something like that.
I always just saw her as a skeleton.
No, she was so hot back in the day. I'll do some research talk.
Yeah, okay.
Just Nancy Reagan.
I'm going to go down a rabbit hole.
God damn it.
I don't know why, but suddenly in my mind, I just thought, would I rather sleep with Nancy Reagan or Angela Lansbury? And I think Angela Lansbury.
Because of all the voices.
Brother, you are just so fucking out of your element right now. That's young Nancy, dude.
Okay, yeah,
Look at her there.
Yeah.
She's fine.
Yeah, she's all right.
beyond fine.
She was our president for like a year.
She was, oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But concerning Joe Ricci, a judge gave him the option of either doing 7 years in a state penitentiary for robbing the mail truck or entering a drug rehab. So Joe took the latter option.
Rehab,
I can't wait for that option.
Absolutely.
However, some of Joe's relatives say that Joe actually never had a heroin problem, but heroin always made a nice excuse when he needed to get out of a legal jam.
There's a little bit of that, I believe, because I think that Joe Ricci, as you'll see, is nothing but a complete and total, perfectly bred opportunist.
Yeah.
So he knows how to make situations work for him. So I think that he started off truly with the criminal's mind, which is a lot of times in a mindset that is similar in many ways. You'd view it as a quote-unquote businessman's mind, right? Because he knows how to flip things.
Legalize it.
He knows how to make things that would be detriment to others. He sees them as an opportunity. I'm going to buy in low on myself. And then when he goes in something he understands. He's like, oh, I don't have to go to jail. I can just say, I'm oh God, I'm so sick. I'm so sick. And then you could go to I'm just going to this it's called a village. Look, oh, this is incredible. It'll be a fountain. And then it'll be like a malt shop. I can go down there and get some sundries. I can go get an ornament, a Christmas ornament, and bring it home. And it'll be like, oh, how thoughtful.
All you got to do is pay off a local congressman, and then boom, whatever you're doing illegal, it's made legal, much like Dana White's new venture, slap fighting. I watched this on TNT yesterday. It is going to lead to death.
Oh, no. You've never watched professional slapping?
Now it's in Nevada. It's sanctioned.
Yeah, dude.
Sanctioned.
You've never seen professional
this guy
slapping?
was bleeding from his fucking ear, and they're like,
dog.
oh, what a great game it was. I was like, that was about to die.
But you remember the other game that's the piece of twine around the ears, and you
That's
hold
fun.
the ears, and you have to pull it back and forth, and whoever fucking folds first is the ultimate pussy?
That's still legal.
I mean, me and my buddies used to slap fight in college. That was one of the things that we would do is like at parties is that you would just slap someone when they weren't looking. And then, of course, then the game was on, and then they slapped you when you weren't looking. And it just got progressively harder and harder as everyone got drunker and drunker.
And it's had zero adverse effect on you.
No, you're not scared. No. I hung out with the girls.
Shut up. No, you didn't.
I hung out with the girls.
There
And
were
used to straighten
girls.
my
There's
hair.
a difference between hanging out with girls and hanging around girls.
I was in the room with women.
Yeah, there were girls hanging out when we were doing slap fights too. It was a party.
Yeah, but the whole time they'd be like, "Ugh, this man.
Yeah, that's what they were getting turned on by.
These men are slapping each other."
Now, while Joe was attending Daytop Village, he met and began dating his first wife, Sherry Benton.
Which disagrees immediately because we talked about, you did a little bit last week where you said in jest that AA was nothing but fat old divorced men in a lonely room.
Just the guys that I know that have been in it.
Yeah, but I just got a lot of feedback from that of people being like, I'm a hot woman and I was in AA and all I did was get fucked. And then I got a lot of that, like, you'd be surprised who's around. It'd be like, you're like, it's called 13 stepping.
I don't. Well, it seems like they need to go to another meeting then for sexual prowess. It's too sexual.
I think it's nice.
Well, one day, Richie showed up at the travel agency where Sherry worked, and he announced that he was done with Daytop because they wouldn't let him graduate. They wouldn't let him.
All the whole time I was just like, oh, hey. Just like they kept asking me, will you please teach here? And I was like, whoa, let's see. I got other options. I gotta go think all the, I got other situations I gotta suss out.
Absolutely. Like do a bunch of heroin in order to get off of what, charges of robbery?
He robbed a mail truck like he's fucking Jesse James.
That's just incredible. It was a time where it's like, yeah, I did commit an act of robbery, but I'm also doing this other illegal thing. So why don't we just let me off?
It worked.
I know.
Well, soon after he left Daytop Village, Joe got engaged to Sherry. And by December of 1969, both Sherry and Joe, they were 24 years old and married. Oh. And Joe had somehow managed to snake his way into a job at a state facility in Connecticut called Drug Addicts Rehabilitation Through Educational Community.
Rolls off the tongue.
DARTEC, for sure.
DARTEC.
Oh, God. You got to come up with the acronym first, fill in the words after.
Sometimes it's difficult.
It is.
Well, I mean, DARE.
Yeah.
What does it stand for, actually?
Drugs after
are radical exceptional. Drugs are really exceptional. Yeah.
Dung after renal expulsion.
That you know that firsthand.
That's medical.
First butt.
Well, taking a cue from Synanon's model, DARTEC adopted the model of using former addicts to counsel patients. But DARTEC at least had the good sense to pair those former addicts with professionals.
It was a real rehab program.
Very much so. Specifically, the program was headed by a psychiatrist named Dr. Donald Pett.
Will do.
God, he worked alongside, there was a dentist named Dr. William Groom. Don't take the kids.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
Now, Dr. Pett seemed to be on the up and up, combining professional counseling techniques with the experiences of recovering addicts. It grounded the treatment in some sense of reality. You could talk to them on their level.
I bet you dogs would love to go to him.
The Dr. Pett.
Yeah, because his name is Dr. Pett.
Puffin would probably be like, I just love Dr. Pett.
But Puffin doesn't really like to engage with strangers.
No, but I do like Dr. Pett because he pets me.
But that doesn't mean that everyone at DARTEC was credible, because Joe Ricci worked there.
Yeah.
Through staff at DARTEC, Joe was introduced to another unscrupulous character with some highly interesting connections. His name was Dr. Gerald Davidson, although information on Dr. Davidson is scant at best, and even the most thorough researchers have had a hard time digging into his past at all.
I have been looking into him because this was the rabbit hole I had entered in, because we talked about this as we did our production call, and we wanted to do the story of Joe Ricci, and then as we went through it, we're like, well, but there's the guy that the second half of this team is Dr. Gerald Davidson.
Gerald Davidson is the co-founder of the Elan School.
Right.
But no one knows anything about him?
Very little about him.
I mean this. It is almost suspicious in the level at which he is not present anywhere on the internet. And I found a bunch of essentially like
as in suspicious as if the CIA did a little scrub job?
Well, he had a lot of weird connections. He definitely went and served on the board of the Harvard School of Medicine around the same exact time a bunch of other fucking horrible assholes did. He was probably taught by B.F. Skinner. He also had this guy named Matthew Israel, who is one of the single most, we should do a whole episode on him.
Yeah.
He is literally one of the single most evil people I have ever heard of. He started a thing called the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center, where they basically electroshock children into changing them, and then it's a lot of like autistic kids and shit like that. And it is brutal. It's still, I want to say it's open until they've tried to close that one 4 times, and I believe it is still open. No, they keep trying to close it. They keep trying to close it.
Turn the lock.
It is a bit difficult.
It's closed.
It makes a lot of people money, though.
Oh, I see. So you're telling me Harvard, the place financed by Jeffrey Epstein that produced Alan Dershowitz,
also,
might have some corrupt foundations?
Same years that Ted Kaczynski went for the various, whatever the tests he was taking during the MK Ultra years,
the
right?
tests that destroyed him, that weren't necessarily related to MK Ultra, but it's all that same like behavioral type of experimentation. Because that's the thing, is that it's not necessarily that this guy was involved in MK Ultra, but what we can say,
a lot of his buddies were.
Well, that's the thing. What I think we can say for certain, it's what we also said in the MK Ultra series. They all went to the same parties. Like this guy is going to the same parties as the guys doing the MK Ultra experiments. They're all talking about it. They're all saying what they're doing. And that's the thing, is that a lot of the MK Ultra guys also didn't even know they were being funded by the CIA.
Yes.
But there was this kind of revolution of behavioral science way back in the 50s, and Gerald Davidson was one of those people.
He even wrote it.
It would be interesting punch bowl conversation. That's for certain.
I guess watch the punch, because you are going to become a Manchurian candidate in a second, but it's going to be a failed one. It's mostly going to be getting pizza for Dr. Davidson.
That sucks.
But these guys, he wrote this article, like one of the like little, because people were looking for like anything that you could hang your hat on about him, and he did write because what they say was a publish or perish is what they say at the Harvard School of Medicine. So everyone's like, well, if he was with Harvard, he would have published. But he did publish several articles, and one was basically saying, and I might be getting this wrong, but it does seem to basically say that a lot of when people come in with what he called quote unquote functional body complaints, which we now call like something like chronic fatigue syndrome or pain, and he basically said all of that is depression, and that we can fix you, and that you'll stop complaining about physical maladies once we fix your mental problems.
Let me guess how they fixed it. Electroshock therapy.
Yeah.
Cool.
And also behavior modification. So whoever this motherfucker is, whoever Gerald Davidson is, because he died in 91.
Yeah.
So we think that maybe it was like before, because as we're going to get into the end of this episode, the internet's what stopped all this shit. So there's these guys that kind of slipped through the cracks. But this guy is shit. It's just like he is so shady. And so as you go deeper into the topic, you start to see more and more people being like, was the Elan School some form of behavioral science experiment that we were all a part of? Like, and the big question is a big old fun, which we learned about the MK Ultra is that it's more questions than not. You're going to be walking through a labyrinth of mirrors for a really long time trying to figure it out, because they got rid of a lot of these records.
I am sorry. It sounds like you're a man on the precipice of divorce.
Well, that's right. I literally joked with Natalie. I was watching that documentary, I was doing something else, and I was just like, all that keeps me from the edge is the fact that you love me. And she looked at me and she did the thing. She's like, I love you. And I was just like, just know every single time I'm in one of these places, just show me your boobies, because that'll bring me back in. Like, just remind me.
She told you to show you her boobies.
I asked to see boobies.
Fantastic.
And she obliged.
That's fantastic.
That's
really it pulls me back from the abyss.
Yeah, I can tell. It's definitely worked.
No, you just got to get into this shit, because it's just wild. You can't. If you got anything on him, sidestorieslpotl@gmail.com. Send them to me.
Please do. And I think at the very least, or maybe even at the very most, you could possibly say that perhaps the Elan School, even though it was founded long after most of the MK Ultra experiments were over, you could possibly say that the Elan School was started as some sort of behavioral modification experiment, or at least a data gathering center.
This is deep. That's deep into conspiracy theory territory, but it tracks because we see how that's their MO.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that. It's really that deep. You know, it could have been
something.
It could have been started, and then it was eventually just abandoned, like the CIA abandoned. I mean, hell, the CIA provably infiltrates governments and then abandons them to complete and total chaos.
Job horribly done. Let's go.
Let's go. Good work, everybody. Copters out. All right. So let the junta's rising and getting to the Capitol building. Yeah. Well, I think I hear the helicopter.
Well, you got to go to that Pizza Hut.
And so, of course, after these things are abandoned by the CIA, of course, they've left it in a state of total chaos. It just keeps going. And that's possibly why there's never been any real government investigation into the Elan schools. Also, it's because they might look back and see some government connection way back in the beginning.
And then you start following the money.
Yes.
People like the DuPonts that actually started the seed program. There was like all of this shit. Why don't we just
jump out of the hole? Let's jump out of the hole. Let's get back to Earth.
I thought the hole's where all the fucking carrots are, bro.
Yeah, you said a bunch of shit about carrots, and I'm just covered in shit. I'm just covered in shit. I'm panicking.
You know what we're gonna do? Oh, I can't believe our friend's dead. Bury him.
Bury him.
So we're gonna bury it, and let's just now we're on solid ground again.
Solid ground.
Ooh, wow.
Solid ground.
Ooh, wow. Because for a second there, I felt like
you're back.
All right. I felt like I was in a mirror land.
Yeah, I felt it. I actually felt that for you. Yeah.
Rise from your grave.
Now, from Dartech, Ricci moved to a drug counseling center called Survival, Inc., which was a group home for opiate-addicted men that doubled as a marriage counseling service for drug addicts.
Cool. Wait, they're married?
Some drug addicts are married, yeah.
Yeah, it's honestly, anytime you get one guy, they throw another, it's like when you go to a hotel and somebody like, for $15. We'll put water in the room. You know what I mean? Like you do something like that, where you just do a little add-on, a little update.
I see. So marriage therapy, that's nice.
Yeah, it is actually a good idea. Someone goes in a rehab, and you bring the spouse in every once in a while. Just say like, hey, let's work through this thing.
Okay.
They help to understand each other.
All right, good.
But as it would happen again and again, controversy followed Joe Ricci when 3 staff members he brought from Dartech were fired for personal drug use.
Also, it kind of talks about it is interesting because a lot of times those addictive relationships are kind of circular, right? Because you're both addicted to the drugs, and quite a lot of times is that you find that your relationship's kind of like empty when you're both not high.
Yeah,
and then that was what brought you together, and now you have to figure out. Can we love?
Probably
cocaine?
not.
Yeah,
probably not.
Different.
Probably just need to get a divorce at that point.
At that point, yeah. If you need drugs to be together, then you need to get someone else who you can hang out with when you don't need drugs.
Yeah,
sober.
Yeah.
Well, you guys need your antipsychotics to be among society.
I don't take antipsychotics.
I'll take a fucking psychotic. Take one right now. I feel like I've taken like 8 since you've been talking.
Yeah, I know. I am upset by myself.
Okay, I don't take antipsychotics anymore.
Okay. See?
We are above ground now, guys. We are good. Flowers grow.
You don't even wake up. Socialism is not even what they call it over there.
Again?
All right, it's different. That is what liberalism has used to call what we call the dictatorship person over there.
Look at the grass growing on the ground.
Wow.
Well, after those friends were fired, Ricci, his wife, and Dr. Gerald Davidson decided to open their own treatment facility, which would evolve into the Elan School. Now, since the regulations for mental health were a little too restrictive in New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts for the kind of quote-unquote radical therapy that Joe and Dr. Davidson wanted to do.
Yeah, they just flipped to page 8 and they're like, no, anal? Well, then how the hell are we going to treat these kids?
It's a no-gay policy.
Oh, man.
Well, after that, they decided to open their facility in Maine, where none of those pesky regulations would get in the way.
Ah, the freedom of skeleton land.
Beautiful place.
But when it came to who did what, it's important to remember that Dr. Gerald Davidson was not in any way involved in the day-to-day operations at Elan. Instead, Davidson was more of a scooper of students who stayed in Massachusetts and used his contacts to both develop the facility from afar and find some funnels for kids.
That's called human trafficking, isn't it?
No, not when everyone's
he's a
purchased.
scooper.
It's
He's a scooper. So
It's
no, officer, I'm
scoopers.
not a human trafficker. I'm a scooper.
Scooper. And like, as long as you get an ice cream scoop, right, the size of a person, and show it to
And
a
you do
government
scoop them, yeah.
officer, they let you go.
Okay.
He might have dipped a little bit of a toe in some form of the operations, but truly, all of the statements was that he was never seen. It's very
He was
strange,
Penguin's henchman when he wanted to go collect the firstborn of Gotham. He was that guy, right?
Well, he was the guy that made it all legit because he was the quote unquote doctor. So he made it all feel like this is a whole medical process that we're doing here.
If we're going for Batman villains here, he's the Ra's al Ghul. He's the man pulling the strings. He's the man in the background.
Also, he knew that if he could convince a bunch of high-profile Harvard-connected families to send their disruptive children to his school, it would help him get other more high-profile customers as well.
Right.
And it could also be that Davidson had entirely different motives for running and opening the school. It could be
Ultra data aggregation.
Okay.
Well, it could be very quickly that he sat back and just got reports. And that also allowed him to keep his distance from whatever happened there. He would always have plausible deniability. I don't ever go there. I didn't know what this guy was doing. So he could set Joe Ricci on fire and walk away scot-free.
Gotcha.
Now, at first, Gerald Davidson publicly had lofty goals for the Elan School, and it was by no means opened or operated in secrecy. After its grand opening in 1971, Davidson, possibly referring to groups like Synanon, he said that therapeutic communities, largely run by ex-addicts, they had become extremely sanctimonious, like all converted heathens become.
Well, that's the idea. Is you immediately you hate on the ones before you, right? Because you're the new kids on the block, so you're like Synanon. Those are the old guys, right? Yeah, they're not cool anymore. They're the establishment.
So he didn't care about the technique. He was just like, they're all cocky with their progress.
Well, it's because
That's what he was upset about.
It's because Chuck went full cult leader, right? So he's just like, we're not like that. He's tastefully distant.
Yeah, well, this is before Chuck Diedrich went full cult leader.
But he saw it, he smelt it.
But he was literally,
yeah.
he's the uncola. He's the uncult.
Yeah, he's the uncult, yes. Well, he derisively said that these other places, they shave patients' heads.
Oh, wow.
They make them wear diapers.
Who could?
They hang degrading signs around their necks.
These things are good.
I only do that if I ask for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And he said,
or if you want to get a discount at Dick's Last Resort.
Yes.
And he said the Elan School, they don't do this stuff. They would never do this stuff.
Okay.
But as we know, Elan School used all of those techniques and much, much worse.
It's almost like he was telling us what they were going to do.
Now, at the same time that Davidson was giving his interviews, Ricci was also promoting this more positive approach, saying in a local news report when the school opened that Elan would be a drug treatment center that instilled self-esteem, self-reliance, and a capacity to love in the individuals they treated. It's all very Synanon.
Sounds good to me so far.
Yeah. Well, he said they tailored the program to fit the individual, not the individual to fit the program, which was, of course, the exact opposite of the Elan School's philosophy.
Again, he's saying fake things, saying the opposite.
Right?
Yeah.
Does sound good.
Well, I mean, that was actually, I think that was, I mean, a little respect is due. It's one of the geniuses of Joe Ricci and Davidson, where they went full PR all the time.
Oh,
they
yeah,
just said it, told. Like, they always talked to the press. They never hid what they were doing.
They were in all of the fucking, they're talking heads.
Yeah.
And all of the news coverage of it. There was like the Children of Darkness, the Child's Own Good, all of those specials, like they appeared it, and like Gerald Davidson looks like a fucking Santa Claus type character. I mean, he doesn't have a beard, but he's like kind, friendly, just being like, these kids just need a loving, gentle hand.
Well, that is an ironic way to hide. If you just blanket yourself all over the place, then of course people will just kind of let you get away with certain things. It's a very bizarre human, very bizarre human condition there.
Now, in the very beginning, when the Elan School was supposed to be just a drug treatment center for teens, there very well may have been some intention to do something more positive, although that possibility is very slim. See, when Ricci and his wife Sherry opened the first Elan School site at a former summer camp in Naples, Maine...
Oh, you love the pizza in Naples, Maine. It's covered in mollusks.
Honestly, that could be good.
That could be good.
Just shell and all.
Be good. Oh, well, not the shell.
Well, it soon became clear that Ricci's goal was money. In the early days, when Elan was struggling, Ricci spoke constantly to employees about how they were going to make their first $100,000. Becoming rich was an obsession.
Hey, come over here. Look, you see how this kid's crying? Look at that. It's 5 cents.
That's
Each
5
one of
cents?
these tears is 5 cents. Look at that.
5 cent
Boom, 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 boom,
tears.
making money right there.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, this former employee said that to Ricci, money represented power.
It does.
And it exuded the appearance that he was someone important who would be accepted and respected by everyone around him, which was actually much more important to Joe Ricci than anything else.
Being respected by others.
Yes, being respected and being accepted.
He wanted to be the guy. Like
Yeah.
they talk about, he wanted to be this kind of like a go-to, like people would look at him. He wanted to be president.
Yeah.
Nightmare idea.
Pretty soon, though, Ricci and Davidson figured out that the real money was not in drug rehabilitation for everyone, but in specifically the troubled teens of wealthy families. And those wealthy families were soon paying $1,200 a month for treatment.
Let me just see, kid. All right, come here, kid. I mean, obviously, you're doing drugs. It's terrible. Like, you
I
stole
actually
a
don't
truck.
no, I don't do
You
any
stole a
drugs.
truck. No, none of that. No,
I just told my dad I didn't want him to run as a senator again because he's a Republican asshole, and I just want him to be home. And,
Oh,
you know,
yeah, something like that. That's real stupid, kid. That's
Well, I just
stupid
wanted to
of you.
be. I
It's dumb
just
that
wanted
you
him to
did
be
it.
my dad.
Let me just,
not like Connecticut senator.
Let me check your wallet. Let me open this up. All right, so this is so you got a credit card. You're 17?
Yeah.
We're
my
gonna
dad-
get you in here. Yeah, we absolutely. We can sign you up. Can we get a body bag?
Dang it.
Well, see, Davidson and Ricci, they had a perfect double team grift going, where Davidson, the reputable psychiatrist, he would recommend the Elan School to wealthy families.
Just a soft, suggestion.
Yeah.
Sounds
Well,
like the opioid epidemic for your brain.
yeah.
It does.
And then Ricci would make the sales pitch, offering Elan's private plane to pick up wealthy troubled teens in a method appropriate for their station.
Yeah,
I
dude.
will say this: out of all the image hits that have been taken over the past decade, private planes have really gotten a hit.
They really
Because
have.
when I was growing up, it's like private planes amazing, and now I'm just like, I don't think I want to go on that because God knows what you're going to have to do or see.
Oh,
Yeah.
I really feel like it's good that the TSA is there for only the fact
Yes.
that I'm afraid of what happens inside of private planes.
Oh my God.
I don't know what happens in there. I know sometimes you drink champagne.
Sometimes.
And then sometimes, though, I think that you all have to watch somebody kill a girl.
Something like that. I mean, that's why it's like, what's the name of your plane? It's called the air deposition. So if you get on it, do you like to sit for like 10 hours in New York City at like a courthouse? You're going to be doing that.
Just so you know.
Free champagne.
Well, in other words, Elan had credentials on one end and charisma on the other. And before they knew it, the Elan School was making enough money where they were able to open a second facility in Waterford, Maine. However, in January of 1974, a mysterious fire destroyed a rented facility in Sebago, or Sebago, whichever one you want.
Whatever you want to go with, sure.
Yeah.
That earned the Elan School a tidy sum in the form of an insurance payment.
There's no way that this was done purposefully in any way, shape, or form. I'm sorry, I choked on I feel like a full diamond just came out of the back of my mouth. No, there's no way I would ever do something like that because,
Right.
as everyone knows, I hate being hot.
Yeah, your tie is a little charred, Mr. Ricci.
I was barbecuing.
Oh, you were barbecuing.
Yeah, I was barbecuing.
Yeah.
I know it's February, but I
Yeah.
love being outside when it's bad.
Your hair is all singed. It was
yeah,
big
yeah,
fire.
yeah. That's a new type of haircut.
Oh,
It's
new
called,
haircut.
I'm going to hell.
Well, this was the turning point for Elan because Ricci and Davidson could then afford to open a permanent facility in Poland Spring.
Is that where the water comes from?
Yeah.
I bet you it is.
It is. Yeah,
Wow.
fresh. If you read the fine print, it's like fresh Maine water.
It ain't from fucking Poland at all.
But then I heard a lot of it's just tap water put in a bottle.
Yeah.
It mostly is.
And I think
Yeah.
Nestle owns it now too. So
And they're
it's all
gonna
legal.
destroy the world.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually have been having these really weird tumors. I've been drinking Flint water. it's good. It's really cheap. It's 5 cents. 5 cents every 12 ounces.
I put it in my car, honestly. It's really been incredible. It's so cheap.
That's a joke about infrastructure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No problem.
Lead pipe.
Lead pipes.
That's right.
Save the people, help the people, fuck Nestle.
That's right.
Wow.
Well, subsequently,
Make your own water. Fucking spit into somebody's mouth.
Can I get through this fucking sentence?
I do like his idea. Recycled water.
Recycled water.
That's piss. All right.
No,
move on.
we're done. Now we're done.
No, we're done. Okay. Subsequently, Joe Ricci became a millionaire. Now, once Elan had a permanent facility, states from all over the country began referring troubled teens to the school through Gerald Davidson's network of colleagues. Because Gerald Davidson can call up people in Illinois, California, Oregon, wherever, say, hey, I got this thing going on. Why don't you send kids here? And they would, of course, say yes, because everyone, I would imagine, everyone's getting kickbacks.
And all these motherfuckers are just in suits walking down the street. Everyone's like, what respectable Americans.
Bane Financial also dropped a bunch of money into the troubled teen industry. Mitt Romney himself made a lot of money specifically off of these troubled teen industry shows.
Yeah, I do like that they named themselves after a supervillain.
Yeah.
Very accurate.
Yeah. Utah is one of the number one states in America for troubled teen facilities.
You got all the room.
Utah is actually number one.
You got all the room for activities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful, but...
Well, while Ricci was the day-to-day guy, Davidson was the real brains of the operation when it came to funneling students into the system. As we said, Davidson had powerful contacts at both Harvard and Massachusetts General Hospital, and he even had enough clout to successfully lobby congressmen in Washington, D.C. to extend insurance coverage to facilities like Elan. This was previously not the case, and this change greatly expanded the troubled teen industry.
So, like, you couldn't get, like, cancer treatment, but, like, if you're
paddling kids in an institutional manner, you got money, buddy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You can't get cancer treatment, but if your son smokes a joint, then they'll pay for that.
I think my son might be gay. The other day he said the word dude, and I just don't know.
But when it came to who controlled the school, it was entirely Joe Ricci's responsibility, which is, of course, the complete opposite of what the Division of Labor should have been.
Right.
Now, according to former employees, Joe, through a steady campaign of fear and intimidation, he became a sort of cult figure to the employees and students who bought into the program.
According to The Last Stop, they basically said that when he came in, it felt like a celebrity was there.
Yeah.
That he'd show up in his Rolls Royce, he had these crazy, he'd have these crazy suits on and shit, and he would do but he'd play it real classic. Not only was he the kindest guy you ever met at the Elan school, but then he also did the general meetings harder than everybody. He was a fucking maniac.
Yeah, psychological torture.
Yeah.
Well, employees said that he had a way of defining things as if his definition was the only one. Classic cult leader stuff. And one kid even compared him to Jim Jones. He said we would have drank cyanide for this guy.
Wow. So the kids were into it.
Well, the employees, the kids who graduated into employment, they were the ones that were the most behind him. They were the ones that would do fucking anything. And we'll get to the reasons why here in a second.
Okay.
Well, as far as how Joe kept control, he had the ability to create an immediate intimacy with people. It's the only person in the room trick that politicians and cult leaders use.
Thing is, I got a 10-foot dick. And I can make it feel intimate in a room that's huge.
I'm 12. Please leave me alone, sir. No, he had this thing where there's something about when it's kind of like an abusive dad, right? Abusive parent, right?
Yeah.
The thing where you create an environment that's really hostile and chaotic and scary, but then you're also the person that brings the ultimate stability as well. So then not only are you so if you pass through the gauntlet of all his love, because then Joe Ricci would get super close with you once you went through years of garbage with him and then became an employee of Synanon.
Technically it's making a Marine.
Yes.
No,
That's
not an employee of Synanon.
you become an employee of Elan school, right? Because that's what it is. It's kind of like breaking a personality down. You make it so somebody is super scared of you, but they also need you because you're also the leader of the thing. And you could make everything stop on a dime for that person. And he probably flexed that times. I mean, we're going to wait on this. He would play people off each other.
He sounds like a shitty Hollywood producer.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just 101 power tactics.
Yeah, I mean, as employees put it, he liked being a god. That's how he thought of himself.
What a shock. I can't believe he liked being a god.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is. And when Joe lost his temper, he'd make life horrific for anyone who got in his way. And this, of course, trickled down to each and every person who was forced into the Elan school. It went from Joe to the employees to the kids, and from the kids, it went to the other kids. It was just it was a culture. He created a culture of fear and pain. Sometimes Joe would financially assist the poorer kids, but this was, of course, another control method. He'd make these kids into staff therapists, even though they had no training. Sometimes they didn't even have a high school diploma, much less a college education.
Hey, a lot of the people I know who want to be therapists are some of the most out-of-pocket human beings I've ever met in my life.
Well, we also have some friends who are great therapists, but it's interesting that he didn't get them an education.
Yeah.
If you want to do this, then you have to put them through school.
Joe thought
do these things that are the proper.
Money, my friend.
That would have been a good way to do it.
Also, what it does is brings you to the outside world of a bunch of different perspectives, and you might hear that the things that Joe Ricci is doing at your place of work are actually really, really bad, and you might be wrong. He wanted specifically people that were not educated because Joe Ricci wasn't educated.
Yeah.
So he literally is he thought it was all stupid.
Yeah.
Think about the word critical, right? Critical thinking. thinking. Critical is bad. Bad thinking.
Bad thinking.
Boom. Who wants to critically think?
Yeah, critics are assholes.
There
Do you
go.
want to be an asshole?
You want to be an asshole?
Now, Ben, what you're talking about is the method of sending like the youngest son and a mob family to law school.
Yes.
So you always have a lawyer.
Boom.
Can't wait.
That's how you do it. That's why I'm going to send my kid to culinary school, so I'm never fucking hungry.
That's a good idea. Or you just buy a chef.
That's called what he did.
Well, the reason why Joe Ricci gave financial assistance to these poor kids was because it made his lieutenants, for lack of a better word, easier to control. Because if anyone refused to ladle the electric sauce, if they refused to spank a kid until they shat themselves, or if they refused to lock a kid in a room wearing a straitjacket, Joe would fire them and take away the fleeting financial security he'd given them.
Yeah, they get shot down.
Yeah, because these kids would, this is the first time they'd ever had any kind of financial security. A lot of them, the only time they'd ever have anything close to a family or a father figure, and he used that again and again.
And then you're shat out on the curb without a true education, and your resume, I guess it's pretty slim.
At one point, it would lead to other work, but then eventually the Elan School would become a dark mark on a CV.
Yeah, Joe is described by most everyone at Elan as cruel, power-hungry, and willing to do anything to get his way. And if he couldn't get what he wanted by intimidation, he always had a fat stack of bills he could use to buy someone off.
I like that way better if I was going to have to get something.
Well, yeah, that's what's fun.
I'd be like, I'll take that.
Well, this threat of do what I say or else was further a burden on female employees and residents, the latter of whom were completely at the mercy of Joe's whims. The prettiest female residents would often be forced to babysit Joe and Sherry's kids, which Sherry didn't like because most of the girls weren't very good at it.
Yeah, it reminds me of a letter that was sent to me that talked about they were sent to a wilderness program, something attached to Sea-Doo, and one of the things that they had to do, or it was mandatory, was called a one-on-one session, where a counselor was attached to a student, and they have to have a one-on-one session where cuddling was encouraged, and that it was supposed to be same sexes, but the guy that was in charge of their little program, he would choose the girls to go cuddle with in another room, and he said that it was good to do, that it was important and mandatory.
Okay. Yeah, maybe if there were sheepdogs.
Yeah.
Cuddle
Sure.
sheepdogs.
There's a lot of different rules for sheepdogs.
Cuddling Jerry earlier, but
That's different. Again, Jerry likes it.
yeah, he does. Yeah, he does.
Well, once, a girl who babysat for the Ritchies inexplicably bullied their son Noah into pretending he was a cat. And then he made the kid sit in her lap and act like a cat.
Okay, well,
It's
I mean,
weird.
of all the
It's
things,
weird.
it's
It's
weird.
a weird kid.
It's a bad babysitter.
It's
Usually
bad
it's
babysitter.
the-
It's a bad babysitter, yeah.
Usually the kid's like, I'm a cat. And then you should be like, okay. But they're like, you're not. So
You're
when
a
mom
cat.
and dad get home, you're not a cat.
You're a cat. But that's how that babysitter was. I feel like the babysitter kind of sees sort of like a manic pixie dream girl type
Yeah.
in a way. Where it's not that she was a bad babysitter, or she was the wrong babysitter.
Well, she was a bad babysitter because when the kid wanted to stop being a cat, she burned him with a lit cigarette.
I don't
Well,
like
there
that.
you go.
Shouldn't do that to a cat either.
You shouldn't do that at all. No.
But when Sherry...
Also, you shouldn't be smoking around a cat or a kid, to be honest.
I mean, this is back in the day. Kids' lungs were stronger earlier then.
Yeah, you can smoke around a cat.
Yeah.
I know. I'm just saying.
Just don't teach a cat to smoke.
That's
and don't
cute.
fuck a cat, which we've covered before.
We have.
But when Sherry Ritchie learned about the cat cigarette incident, Joe told her, nothing wrong with it. That's just what people do. There's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing
That's what
wrong
people
with
do.
it.
That's
Wrong
what
with
people, you know how many times I tell somebody to be a cat?
Yeah.
Like, you know how many
Wait.
times I'm out there? Honestly, I wish this cat could smoke. I've been trying to teach this cat to smoke.
Make it a cool
for while.
cat.
I've been talking to Dr. Davidson. None of his MK Ultra tricks are allowing anything. You know what the thing about a cat is? They can't suck right.
Yeah.
I keep shoving it in his mouth. He keeps coughing.
Cats don't got lips.
Cat's got lips.
Cats do have lips. You know what a cat calls a cat nap? A nap.
You sure cats got lips?
Grinding
Yes,
halt.
they definitely
Shows
do.
come to a grinding halt.
They definitely do have
I
lips.
feel that.
Well, the thing is about Joe Ritchie is that he was telling his wife there's nothing wrong with this cat cigarette thing because that would stop a steady stream of young vulnerable girls from coming into his home.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like if you're David Spade and you let a bunch of like random women in your house. You're like, yeah, sure, yeah, play with my Emmys. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like you just have to kind of let them be, because if you start telling them to stop playing with the Emmys, the models will stop showing up.
Very intriguing, very bizarre non sequitur. Very bizarre to bring Mr. David Spade into this. Does he have any Emmys?
Yeah, I think so. I think
He
has
deserves
it.
some.
Yeah.
Just shoot me.
Yeah.
Just
that's what I'm
shoot
saying.
me.
You never
There
forgot
we-
that era.
I love that. Yes.
Well, from reports, Ricci singled out girls and gave them special treatment, and often did coke with the very girls he was supposed to be treating.
This is medicinal.
This is why they
This is
fucking-
medicinal. This is just Advil. It's Advil.
They were just hopped up on coke, being like, "You're a cat," and then they would burn it. That's what. Now I get it.
But because of all the bad weirdness, and because Joe spent most of his time at Elan, Sherry and Joe were no longer living together by 1978, and Sherry filed for divorce soon after. But because Joe was now wealthy and still a total dirtball, he decided around this time that he wanted to buy a horse track called Scarborough Downs.
That is the single most divorced man thing that has ever been said out loud. Besides being a hollow moon, like, Redditor, right? There is the idea of going out and buying a horse track.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like, not a horse to race on a track. The track. It's also like so much work.
Yeah, it's like if you bought a slot machine just for your home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
what you can do.
But you have to put your own money in it,
Yes.
and then you
I just like pulling the lever.
He actually had to write a letter to all the people at the track that he wasn't going to bet on races at the track and that he wasn't going to run his own horses at the track. But of course, he bet on all the races
he
at the
did.
track.
It's
And he
his
ran his
man.
horses all the time.
He's
Well,
the
you
most
know-
divorced man who's ever been.
You know the horse that's his because it's the only one with hooves. All the other ones are just bloody stumps.
yeah.
I won again. This is amazing.
Rise from your grave.
Well, he told Sherry, hey, why don't you go in on the horse track with me? Doesn't matter if we're
Like,
divorced or not.
ooh,
You're
doesn't
just
matter.
we're good together in business.
We're good. You love horses. I love
Great.
gambling.
Love that. I can't believe this man. So he runs a horse track and then he runs a home for troubled youth.
Yes.
That's perfect.
It tracks.
Yeah, but Sherry easily recognized that Joe was just stalling until he had enough money to buy the racetrack before she got her cut from the divorce.
Smart and dumb.
Yeah.
At the same time.
But so she was able to get out while the getting was good.
But she was also a scumbag too, right?
I mean, she was involved in the
she
school.
knew everything that was going on.
I don't know. I can honestly say I have no clue.
I think a lot
Yeah,
of
because
times we're like, oh, the wife has blinders on, but also like they talk.
Yeah, a lot of times
Maybe
I would.
they didn't. I don't
this
know.
is again, it's talking out of school, but a lot of times it does seem the wife does know a bit more
I
than
think
they.
so.
They
Have you talked to a man?
but mostly you're just trying to get out. You know what I mean? The best thing she could have done was get out, as you saw it all the while. Because this was all from the book. What was the biography on Joe Ricci?
We will give the source at the end of the episode.
Got it. But
right.
there's it's all in there, but no one tells her story because they're all coming for Joe Ricci.
Gotcha.
Well, just because Joe Ricci's wife said no to the racetrack, that didn't stop Joe.
Nah, man, because he's a true American.
All right.
Dr. Gerald Davidson agreed to throw in for half.
All right. Actually, you know, as much as those horses go round and round, I'm absolutely fascinated.
And in 1979, they bought Scarborough Downs. This tells you how much money these guys made at a lawn school for $1.2 million. That is $6 million in today's money.
You're making money though. See,
You
the
think
thing
we
is,
could take any of these horses? I see that one. Yeah, he's running in a circle, but we can make him run in the trapezoid if I get some electric charges.
absolutely.
Now, by 1979, Elan School was, of course, a horrific place of torture, degradation, and humiliation, all under Joe Ricci's insistence and guidance. But this was all kept from the public, partly because troubled teen institutions were still a new thing, and partly because Maine did fuck all on due diligence when it came to inspection.
Also, people were super into the idea of this because we were being fed this line of this rampant like rise in teenage rebellion, like they do like every 10 years. It's like a new re-up of it. It's like the kids' version of the Satanic Panic.
And as a result, a newspaper article released just before Joe's divorce titled Meet Maine's Most Unusual Millionaire.
He's the most unusual millionaire. I figured it'd be like a lobster guy.
Yeah, well, that would be usual for Maine.
Oh,
That would be. Yeah.
but he's like, but
You're allergic to shellfish.
Were you about to do like Lobster Jim?
Are you doing lobster jam? I almost think that's almost a you character.
just I actually do lobster, Jim. Please.
I'm going to go out here and I'm going to try to find me a couple of lobsters.
It's that easy.
Lobster Jim.
Character characters are that easy.
Yeah, I've got lobsters in my jeans.
God, I really wish we could have you do my GPS. Don't go down that road. No.
Don't go down that road. What road am I supposed to go down?
No, see, it's just a lie. It's just all elimination of all other roads. No, don't go down that road. So I'm taking exit 14 then.
So I should just stay home.
Well, in Meet Maine's Most Unusual Millionaire, Joe Ricci was painted with a very different brush.
Oh, yeah.
Described as the embodiment of the American dream, Ricci was portrayed as a rags to riches triumph.
Yeah, man, because he's got the brain, he's got the sex, he's got the dick, he's got the moves.
I mean, he can be both a horrible serial predator, a horrible businessman, and the epitome of the American dream.
It's almost like
these things kind of marry.
It seems to be the American dream.
Well, falsely claiming that he'd grown up in rat-infested squalor, Ricci claimed to have graduated from the supposedly brutal Daytop village with flying colors while still in his teens.
They closed down his school because they never met such a perfect student.
Yeah, why have schools when you're so smart?
He also claimed to have founded Dartech. Not true. And he said he took out a third mortgage on his house to start Elan. Also not true.
Yeah.
All he did was make money.
Right.
But as it went again and again, no one checked up on Ricci's claims. And Elan naturally got even worse after Ricci's first wife, Sherry, left.
Also a common string. Look at Chuck Dieterich. Look at Jim Jones. All these guys.
Yeah.
Well, no, Jim Jones's wife, she was there till the very end.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She just became a loveless shell because he was banging all the other people. And then she just kind of segued to the side and then tried to have her own court. And then feebly was like, no, stop at the end.
Yeah, he was exhausted.
Yeah.
He was exhausted.
She's got a nice grave, by the way.
Good.
It's really nice.
Great.
Really
Thank you
good.
for the
Wow.
update.
Cool. Good.
Let us know
Do you
what
go
it's
leave
like.
flowers like once a year? Or?
No. We went and visited it on our Jim Jones tour.
No, I remember.
So go-
your anniversary. Yeah.
Go dump a little Flavor Aid out. Jim Jones' grave and his wife. Just one for Jim.
Now, reportedly, Joe did cocaine almost every day during the 80s.
It's busy.
It's the 80s.
Yeah. And he would often preside over employee parties where he openly rode the slopes with teenagers and young adults.
I mean,
That's cool terminology.
Yeah, it is kind of cool.
Yeah,
That's
He
what
rode
they
the
say.
slopes.
Yeah, they say that on Craigslist.
Yeah, who wants to go skiing?
Oh, that's cocaine.
Yeah, man, I went over there and I had all my equipment. But they were all wearing swimsuits.
Because my
I
thing
can't
was, it
believe
was July, so I figured they had some kind of machine.
No, it turns out I was the table.
So 3 days later, I have 2 ski poles up my asshole, right?
You just yada yada 3 days.
Ricci was also able to upgrade Elan in the early 80s with another alleged insurance scam, although nothing was ever proven. In 1983, the Scarborough Downs clubhouse burned down.
Oh, no.
Another
God.
burned out.
Oh, God. He comes up with a nightcap on, like, and like a full, like, Ebenezer Scrooge. Like, I was simply asleep in my sleeping den.
Seems
and,
like your nightgown has a little bit of charm.
that was because I'm doing this new, I saw Chef's Table. So this incredibly, cooking over an open flame is the most primal way to cook. You see the flames licking the food itself, and it's almost an erotic dance between the venue of cooking and the food itself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Seems like you're around a lot of things that burn down.
Oh, I like coals.
You do like coals. Okay.
Well, Ricci claimed that it was arson, but somebody else did the arson.
Definitely.
So this is interesting. So he went with the half-truth.
Yeah. He went, well, I mean, that's the thing. Allegedly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Legitimate businessman.
How many businesses do you get to have burnt down that you own?
You know what? I'll say for my own coverage, 3. Just for later on, I think by the second time, that's just sad.
Yeah.
The second time, you can do
Okay,
the
so
thing
it's on. So the third time you are busted, you don't get the 4th. You're done.
No,
at 3.
no. 3 is like you got 2 open.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then 3 with time to get to Mexico.
Got you.
Well, investigators couldn't connect it to Joe, and he again earned a tidy sum. Truly riding high on his own bullshit, Joe Ricci then decided to run for governor of Maine in 1985.
What the fuck is the campaign slogan?
It is just him. It literally is like, me, I'm Joe Ricci. I'm not a seasoned politician. I don't know how these budgets work or how transit's supposed to be organized.
Awesome. It's a really key issue, though.
But I connect to the local. I connect to the modern, the working man. All right, that was his whole thing, was that he's like, I'm a regular guy.
Yeah, you're
like
an alcoholic. You've fallen asleep with a cigarette. You've burnt down your house.
You know how it is. I look at me. My head's too big for me to wear my shirt closed. So that's why, I'm like you.
Yeah.
I'm just voting for him because, again, I think that he is similar to me, self-made millionaire, just like I have
Just like
$100. Like what I'm going to be.
Well, he said that he'd previously worked at non-union shops and he'd organized places like Arnold Bakery. You've seen that bread.
Oh, yeah, and thank God they finally unionized at Arnold.
No, they organized in the 1920s.
Well, he wasn't alive
It
yet.
was a long time ago.
25 years before Richie was born.
The birth of unions is when they began cracking down. That's when capitalism actually began. This is the Medicis, dog. Fucking 1400s, dog.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
I learn things.
I think you need to it's weird how you get smarter and dumber. It's just weird.
Every year.
It's just quite.
What is Medicis?
The Medicis were the guys that Italian. First of all, the original mob, right?
So
the powerful
they
Italian
call themselves
family.
the Medicis.
The Medicis.
Well, fuck. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the Medicis, because I thought you said like meta cheese.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like
Metachese.
That's weird.
Like a cheese.
That's
making a
weird.
sandwich.
I thought you'd picked up some more like stupid slang.
No, I heard some new slang. You know what's a good one? He's got Riz. Okay, you got the Riz.
We're going to move on.
He got the Riz. That means, I think that's an Asian version of Wizard of Oz.
Oh, fantastic.
He's got the Riz.
No, it means flirty.
Great. Again, we'll move on.
Yeah. Well, really, it seemed like Richie only ran for governor as a sort of like internal ego trip.
Isn't that why everybody runs for governor?
Some people want to save the world, like Jesse Ventura, who finally got the train to run in Minneapolis.
That's one train, and it's run by steam.
It's not a steam train. No, there are some good-hearted people in politics, but unfortunately, pieces of shit like this muddy all the waters.
Well, and when I say like internal ego trip, I mean like within his own organization. It's like he got bored with the Elan School game and he wanted another way to manipulate the people around him.
So he's the head of an Elan School. He's got a racetrack, and now he wants to be governor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, a woman who worked for the campaign said that Richie was constantly manipulating everyone, giving them jobs to do, but distracting them with constant phone calls or meetings so the jobs would never get done. And when those jobs didn't get done, Richie would get angry and ostracize whoever displeased him. And additionally, Joe would also distract everyone with drugs and alcohol, partying at all hours of the night, then expecting everyone to show up fresh-faced and ready to go the next day at 9 a.m.
My question is, was he fresh-faced at 9 a.m.?
Well, he was alert.
He was there
at 9 a.m. He was awake.
That's what Jordan Belfort used to say. If you want to go out with the boys, you got to wake up with the men.
I don't care what Jordan Belfort used to say because I think he pulls a Costanza and sleeps under his desk all day.
He does, yeah. You see, that's the thing is, if you just get fucked up at work,
yeah,
you just wake up on time.
Yeah.
Boom.
That's the thing is that, I mean, on a surface level, like, yeah, Joe Ricci's there. You know, especially if you're doing cocaine for a decade straight, you got a rhythm going on.
That's the thing. You build a tolerance in a way that makes you almost a better person.
Okay.
But you're not going to do a good job. And no one's going to do a good job.
No.
And when anyone fucked up in Richie's campaign, save for Joe himself, they'd be fired immediately.
Yeah, because no one can fire Joe.
Yeah.
The only one who can fire Joe is God.
That's
and a bullet to the center of his brain.
I think the only job that you could possibly do a better job while you're on cocaine, ship captain. I don't know why. It's a lot of bumps, a lot of road. You're alone.
No,
you're in the middle of the ocean.
I don't even think you sell cocaine better when you're using cocaine. You know what I mean? I don't think
you sell it better, but I think if you're a ship captain, you look at the whales.
No, the only thing that cocaine is really good for is playing a keyboard or a keytar a lot of times
Possibly.
in some form of krautrock style band.
Yeah.
That is the sound of cocaine.
Yeah.
Actually, one night I did do cocaine and played some drums. Like I jammed with a couple of guys. I played a krautrock beat for 45 minutes straight.
Do you actually think it was good, or do you think you were just so fucked you thought it was great?
I mean, we weren't fucking playing Farm Aid. Like, we're just three guys. we were
That's the biggest concert you
Farm
can
Aid.
think of.
Farm Aid. The pinnacle.
We're three guys in a fucking windowless room in Greenpoint in 2012. No one cared what we were doing.
All that
I'm just
mattered
saying.
was the fucking vibe, dude.
Yeah.
You didn't know if the Hives were outside listening?
The Hives. They're in
A
Sweden.
very popular band.
I know how the Hives are. They're not there.
Yeah, you probably don't even know who the Hives are.
I know I get Hives.
Yeah, so do I.
Well, all of this was not a winning strategy for a gubernatorial race.
What?
And Joe predictably lost his bid for governor. But Joe didn't take responsibility for his horrendously run campaign. No. Instead, Joe blamed it on being an Italian in Maine.
Tell me about it. That's what happened to Andrew Cuomo as well. He was too Italian to follow the law.
There was a mayoral race out here. There was this fella Caruso, this billionaire guy, and the chick doing one of the debates. She was like, "So what do you think as a white man? It's a diversity." He said, "I'm not white. I'm Italian."
Yeah, dude, that's what I'm saying.
I do love that.
I'm not white. I'm Polish.
Brave.
So all of you are just trying to distance yourself from the English and the Irish, aren't you?
I can't. I'm not white. I'm German. God dang it. That doesn't really work.
Wow.
Well, after Joe said, like, hey, I'm getting all this discrimination. I'm Italian. What's the problem? 60 Minutes actually gave him a platform to complain.
No.
Everybody says, oh, just because you wear a tracksuit every day, even court. Oh, just because I pay people in fucking spaghetti. Oh, that's racist. That's fucking racist.
It is a little bit racist. There was somebody talking about how Italians are like, we're not all mobsters, and if you walk into like one of their rooms, it's just covered in Goodfellas.
Yeah.
It's like, you have to make a choice.
See, since Joe had a lot of money, and since he was Italian, it was assumed by the community in Maine that he was connected to the mob.
Oh, wow.
Which actually wasn't true. That's the crazy thing.
That's the only thing he should have been doing.
He is of all of the people who are not attached to the mob. He has all of the characteristics of a man who would be.
There is a reason why we have subconsciously been using mob terms and mob comparisons this entire episode.
Henry's been doing it very consciously.
But he is also, I do think he might have had a touch of a connection to the mob.
Maybe.
But we don't know. Again,
I mean, if
you own a horse track, there is no way. If you're the only Italian man that runs a haunted horse track just outside of Stephen King's home, you might just be a mafioso.
There you go. Good Jeff Foxworthy. Also, he's surrounded by shellfish. I feel like this is mob all over the place.
Yep.
Because the one thing that took down the mob even more so than the FBI, the gout. The gout. Yes, indeed.
Well, I mean, his money, it was from torturing defenseless teenagers, but it wasn't from the mob.
Not from the mob.
That's not from the mob.
Okay.
Amazingly, the 60-minute segment only mentions a law school in passing and focuses mostly on Joe whining about how everyone in Maine assumes he's mafia just because he's Italian and wealthy. And that's why he can't get a loan.
I've said a lot of times I'm too Polish to get a loan, and it's just because I can't figure out the application.
Absolutely. So he's got two burnt down buildings attached to his name, runs a really corrupt school, a horse track. Yeah, I wonder if it is because he's Italian.
I think it's because he's Italian.
Yeah.
There's even a small section. This is how far they crawl up his asshole. There's a small section in the segment that I can't play it. It doesn't read an audio. It's just Joe Ricci looking out of a window wistfully while he listens to a sad song. I don't know what the sad song is. It's unidentifiable.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie.
I don't know why they think I'm Italian.
That's amore. Just because I danced to that at my wedding?
Well, let's play the only mention of a lawn school in this entire segment. And this speaks of the school in only the most glowing terms. This tells you what people... This is like 1987?
Wasn't this after like Geraldo or was this around that?
Oh, no.
Dude, this was before?
Dude, this was even before Geraldo.
Because that was the only great piece of journalism he ever did, but it was actually very important.
But no, that was a mental institution in Staten Island.
Yes.
This is the
troubled... That was the Cropsey school, right?
That was the Cropsey school, yeah. The teenager, like the troubled teen schools, Geraldo loved him. Donahue, Sally, Jesse, Raphael, all of them. Half of like the teens go to boot camp.
They came from them.
Yeah, it came from them.
They were telling their parents to fucking send their kids to these things.
I forgot Geraldo had a show like that.
Oh, yeah.
I think Joe Ricci was actually on an episode of Donahue. You know, like these guys, like they...
Well, we're not going to besmirch the great name of Donahue.
And it's just so difficult.
Donahue.
I love Donahue.
And we're that Italian, they have to put all these paper towels so you can even sit on the fucking furniture because the olive oil is just shooting out of your fucking asshole. Like, it's really difficult to be Italian.
This is going to get us canceled somehow.
I don't know why.
I'm just... You're half Italian, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
See? I can say it.
Yeah, you're half Italian. Your mother.
My mother's Italian.
Okay, that's perfect. It's like Judaism, you're fully Italian.
I guess.
Well, the only thing that it mentions in regards to controversy when it comes to a lawn school is how people said back then, is funded by the mob. It's a laundering operation for the
Yeah,
mob.
it's funded by a little mob called the Central Intelligence Agency.
Ooh.
Yeah, bro. Getting a little too real to be understood.
Wow.
Let's play that clip.
The Joe Ricci story wasn't always this bleak. Joe Ricci is a former dope addict who succeeded in founding one of the most prestigious schools for troubled teenagers in the country. It's called Elan, a treatment center that, over the years, has used some controversial therapies to bring otherwise confused kids out of their shells. Parents spend $25,000 a year to send problem teenagers to the school. That's what made Joe Ricci a millionaire while barely into his 30s. But Elan has also come under scrutiny. Among the allegations the bank says it heard was that Elan was under investigation for being a front for the laundering of organized crime drug money.
That's the reason why.
And that's it. Like, that's the
So they
only
just,
thing
like,
that they mention.
Doesn't sound like they were really listening to the audio, because it seems like that child was screaming in immense amounts of pain.
Well, it
They
was a
did
general
something
meeting.
that really, that was a general meeting, and they do a thing where it is kind of magical in its own way, where you lead with your, maybe that's propaganda, maybe that's a term for it, where you lead with your worst aspect. He was proud and wanted people to see the clips of the general meeting. They wanted them to see that, because then they'd always flip it. We're like, that may sound harsh, but it's something that these troubled teens need. Like, they would do this thing where they would live out loud. They would show all of the fucked up shit out loud. They talk about the ring.
Most fucked up shit.
Not the ones that were kids dying and all that kind of shit, but they wanted you to, like, that's how they could actually hide, by hiding in plain sight really well, by just letting it, all those kind of secrets out a little bit, and be like, this is the way we do it.
They do the big stuff, like the ring and the general meetings. Like, they'll say that, like, yeah, we do that, but then they also give, like, caveats that they don't actually follow. Like, so, like, yeah, we use the ring, but it's only evenly matched students, and it's only people who have been extremely violent
offenders.
People are like, oh yeah, that makes sense, but they don't mention electric sauce. They don't mention straitjackets for weeks on end. They don't mention the spankings, and so people just kind of let it go because they think, oh, it can't possibly get worse than that screaming.
The screaming. Honestly, there's something about just the audio of it. They're like, well, that's terrible, but then you kind of block everything else out.
The only good thing 60 Minutes ever did was Andy Rooney.
Yeah.
That's it. And technically, he was just a very mean man.
Give me a Rooneyism.
Well, my favorite. License plates. Now, why does every state have to put their name on a license plate? Why do I care where you're from?
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
it's the best one that he's ever done.
That's a good one.
Bottled water. He did a whole thing on bottled water. He's like, people, I walk by at the desks, and all these people have bottled water. How much do you think this costs? This is $1.50. I go to the bubbler. I go to the water fountain. My water, it's free. Like, he's just so on point. Yes. And technically, he was right about bottled water.
He was.
Yeah. Well, actually, until all the lead in the water, and now we have to drink it.
That was not Andy's fault.
Institutionalized bad problems.
Now, the main thrust of the 60 Minutes segment is really the fact that Joe Ricci couldn't get a $125,000 loan because it was believed by both the bank and the government that he was in the mob, and because he was suspected in the death of a mobster named, like, Little Tony or something.
And it was a dumb name because it was kind of fat.
Right. They always are. Isn't there just 5 more people into one of his Elion schools?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What's $125,000? Isn't even that much if you're getting a year a pop.
He didn't want to spend his own money.
Mm-hmm. That, however, was only a part of why he was denied. And the other part, having to do with Elan, was not mentioned in the 60 Minutes segment. See, enrollment at Elan was steadily declining, and Elan was provably poorly managed, even though Ricci and his lawyers maintained that Elan had a 90% success rate.
That's actually not even that good.
90%?
That's just the reverse of cigarettes. That is not 90. I need a 99.5%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 10 out of every 100 people come back totally fucked up. Mm-hmm. A carnival ride would have to be shut down.
Well, to them, it doesn't work. And again, they're up front with this concept of it's for kids that are really fucked and have nowhere else to go. And they don't say, like, no, it's for anybody who can pay for a child to be here. No.
Right.
But after Ricci filed a battery of lawsuits against the bank claiming defamation, breach of contract, inflicting emotional distress, and discrimination under the Equal Opportunity Act, he was infuriatingly awarded a settlement of $15 million.
What? He got $15 million for being Italian?
That's the American dream. That's the American dream, is taking the bank to a court and getting more money than you wanted from a loan from the court.
This was an era, and again, I love the Italians, but this is an era where we trusted them? What is happening?
Well, after becoming incredibly rich, Ricci's actions and behavior took a further downward spiral, and his drug use greatly increased along with his aberrant behavior.
Weird. More money, more drugs. Interesting. Wow.
And this finally caught the attention of the Elan School's co-founder, Gerald Davidson.
Now, he can deal with a lot of fucked up shit, right? He can deal with, like, you helping him break down the minds of all of these
physically abused children, sure.
I mean, and across the board, and taking whoever, and then maybe using some MK Ultra tactics, and maybe taking some money from various weird sketchy things. He can deal with a lot. But there's one thing he won't deal with. Joe Ricci taking his money.
Yeah. Joe Ricci was funneling funds from the Elan School to the horse track.
Whoa. Now that I didn't see coming.
The horse track was losing money.
Whoa, what?
Yeah, I know.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, horse track wasn't doing well. And so Gerald Davidson filed a lawsuit against Joe Ricci. But it's weird because Gerald Davidson also owned half of the horse track.
It just sounds like they're lunatics.
I think that Dr. Gerald Davidson viewed Joe Ricci as a massive liability and decided that he wanted to figure out a way to cut him loose as well.
Or at least to cut himself loose.
Yes.
But lest you think that Davidson never had any idea what was going on at Elan, it was alleged that he sent a relative of his to this hellhole. And this relative, by accounts, got worse treatment than most. Her name was Jennifer. And according to one message board that, I got this from a message board, so take it with a grain of salt, Jennifer apparently went through a particularly brutal general meeting with a friend of hers named Mary O. In front of the whole school, Jennifer and Mary were allegedly sauced, which was Elan slang for having a ladle of feces and garbage slurry poured over your head.
That'll teach you to what?
Not even to have a big old head covered in shit.
Not even close to being over. They were then allegedly handcuffed, wrapped in sheets like mummies without being cleaned off at all, still covered in shit and garbage, and they were made to lay on the dining room floor for hours, encased in electric sauce.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, and this is a relative, if this is true, of Dr. Gerald Davidson. And I don't believe that he didn't know enough to know to not send their kids to the thing. I think that he knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
Must be a strange family reunion.
It's just more the children don't have autonomous minds.
Yeah.
And when that didn't have much of an effect on Jennifer's behavior, she was drugged into submission for weeks on end. She was so sedated that her mouth hung open long enough to severely chap her lips, the only lubrication being a steady stream of drool that dripped out. And yet, Gerald Davidson kept sending kids there, at least until he was forced out following the racetrack lawsuit.
He forced himself out.
Okay.
Now, after Gerald left, Elan continued operating well into the 90s, and Joe Ricci made another unsuccessful run at the governor's office in 1998.
1998.
Still going,
Holy
1998,
crap.
still going strong. But right around the time that Joe decided to run for governor, a murder trial involving Elan School began, concerning a killing that had taken place over 20 years earlier. That was the murder of Martha Moxley. And the man on trial for that murder was a former Elan School student named Michael Skakel. This would be the beginning of the end for the Elan School. Now, Skakel wasn't the only Elan student in its history to be attached to a murder, but his case got worldwide attention because he was the nephew of Ethel Skakel Kennedy, a.k.a. the widow of good old RFK himself, Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah, dog.
This guy was Bobby Kennedy's nephew.
I still like to imagine that Bobby Kennedy was one of the good Kennedys. I don't know if it's true.
Well,
I'm just going to hold on to that mythos.
Hold on to it.
Hold on to it. I think that he's fine right now. This is because, again, this is
He's
his
way
nephew.
dead. He's way
He's
dead.
He's
dead.
got to be better than that one that did the rebuttal to the debate and did it with, he had those really wet lips and his lips were so wet that all anyone talked about was his wet lips, and then he just disappeared from the public eye completely.
Multiplicity is a real thing, and you just get dumber and dumber with every generation, don't you?
Oh, yes. How many dead people have to be connected to the Kennedys?
Oh, they have Czech Bekuic, Czech.
Yeah, it's like,
JFK probably killed Marilyn.
What do you mean have to be connected?
That's what I'm saying.
I
It's
don't know if it's
before us all to be like,
I don't know if it's a Kennedy thing. I think it might just be a filthy rich thing.
No,
it seems like the filthy rich have a lot of
Like
dead
bodies
people.
just pile up?
A lot of dead bodies pile up around filthy rich families.
Even the Kennedy, I do think they have more like Paris Hilton's not killing anyone.
No. But it's like, you got, I mean, obviously the ones that got murdered, but you got all the other ones that like are like next to ones. You got Teddy and you get, it's a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like the Kennedys are up there.
Yeah.
Maybe the Rockefellers, they've killed, right?
Well, they've led to
the mob ties and shit.
those guys have led to opportunities where they've like worked probably thousands of people to death. You know what I mean? That's different though. That's statistics.
But did the Rockefellers work with the mob and have a couple of hits out and things
I'm not
like
sure.
that?
I mean, the
We'll cover
Rockefellers are
'em.
part of the Bilderberg group, right?
We're going to do. That's how you know last podcast is ending.
Yeah.
That's how we will begin our 20 episode series.
And you're going to be
on
able
the
to,
Illuminati.
You're going to be able to listen to that exclusively on Infowars.com. It's going to be great. We're going to save the whole network.
So concerning this murder, on October 30th, 1975, Martha Moxley, aged 15, was bludgeoned to death with a golf club in the wealthiest part of Greenwich, Connecticut.
So on brand.
Yeah. The attack was so vicious that the golf club broke into pieces. One of those pieces was used to stab Martha Moxley in the neck.
Jesus.
The grip, which would have had the fingerprints, was of course never found. But the golf club came from a set belonging to an extraordinarily wealthy neighbor named Rushton Skakel.
What a fucking
Rushton Skakel?
Someone took my monogrammed golf club. Well, my monogrammed golf club. I cannot perform with something that doesn't have my initials on it.
Yeah. Rushton Skakel was Ethel Skakel's brother, and the Skakels were richer than the Kennedys by far.
What business were the Skakels
It
in?
was something like, I don't know, like industrial
Oil or
coke?
some
I
shit?
don't know.
Shipping and it's that type of thing where it's just
All right.
like they run the boxes that go on the ships, like that style
That's
of
good.
like they make billions of dollars, but you don't know what they do.
Yeah. Well, Rushton Skakel, he was the father of 5 brothers who were known far and wide to be a pack of demons let loose on Earth.
This was an entire. If there could have been a family annihilator that could have stepped in, that could have saved a lot of problems, it could have been Rushton
It's
Skakel.
never the bad families. It's always someone killing good families.
Yeah. Now, the murder went unsolved at the time. Go figure, considering the people involved.
No way.
It's completely solved, but we're going to say it's not solved.
Let's just.
We know who did it, but come on.
Guys, we need a bigger rug and a bigger broom.
Yeah. Can't take down Rushton.
Well, the main suspect was one of the Skakel brothers, but not Michael Skakel. Instead, the main suspect at the time in 1975 was his older brother, Tommy. So in 1991, to finally put the matter to rest, the father, Rushton Skakel, hired a private investigator to solve the murder.
See, that's how you always make sure you get something handled. You do an internal investigation.
Yeah.
Because then you handle the investigation and it's just you investigating yourself.
This one,
O.J. Simpson, it's worked great for him.
Oh, yeah.
this one backfired.
Oh.
This investigator was given full access to the Skakel
It's
brothers.
like a movie. It's like a Joaquin Phoenix movie.
Yeah. By the way, the Greenwich police never were able to talk to the Skakel brothers. The lawyers kept them far away, even though the murder weapon provably came from the Skakel home.
Right.
Upon investigation, it was discovered that Michael Skakel, the future law school student, he used to sit outside of Martha Moxley's window and masturbate in a tree. Like it was a not acceptable anymore 80s movie. So
You should
that's
never
just-
done it though. I feel like it was never good.
yeah.
No, it's not even. That's not even what they ate. No, it was. You hold a boombox. You play songs. I mean, even in Animal House, he didn't jerk off. He was on a ladder.
I guess
Yeah,
the
but
only
no,
good
you
part-
never got the joke?
Did that? He got a boner,
Yeah.
and that's why he felt. Belushi didn't have that big of a.
I also find it like if you're masturbating in a tree, at least a good way to get rid of it is that you could just give it to one of the little baby birds.
You are disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
Take all of
Yeah, but also that wouldn't even hold true to that because his hands were, first of all, they were placed on top of the ladder, Belushi that is in Animal House, and so he got hard, but he never actually went down and did the deed.
Yeah, he didn't masturbate openly on
Not.
film. Yeah.
I mean, there were some issues in the film,
Yeah.
but it's still it's a classic.
Now, Michael's alibi for the murder was that he was at his cousin's place watching a Monty Python movie.
yeah.
Don't bring Monty Python into this.
But once the investigation was complete, it was concluded, much to Rushton Skakel's chagrin, that Michael Skakel had murdered Martha Moxley, and Tommy Skakel helped him move the body.
That's got to be a rough family meeting. Sitting there with the two private investigators, and they're like, "Your son's a murderer," and they're both like, And he's like, what's to be done with them? I guess we'll put him into soccer.
Oh, no, it's a fate worse than prison.
This was surmised in 1991. This was like almost 20 years after the murder actually happened.
Listen, Mr. Private Investigator, we did not hire you to solve this crime. Didn't you understand the point of you?
Believe me, I tried to not solve this crime.
Way back in the mid-70s, the Skakels suffered no consequences, but soon after the murder, Michael Skakel was sent to the Elan school because he, not surprisingly, had a pretty intense problem with drugs and alcohol.
And masturbating at people's windows and murder.
That was also a problem.
It was an issue.
It seems like the bigger problem.
The Skakel didn't take to Elan, and after attempting an escape, he was punished by being made to alternate between sitting and standing for an hour at a time each, sit for an hour, stand for an hour. Made to do that for 3 days straight without sleep.
I kind of like this, though.
I mean, for
But
him,
that's-
sure, yeah,
That's
it's
like
different.
that one guy that I wanted to have it happen to.
But that's a typical Elan school punishment. A lot of kids had to do that.
Yeah.
Then, somehow, Joe Ricci found out about the Martha Moxley murder. So, in a general meeting, Joe told everyone that Skakel had killed a girl in Greenwich.
Someone must have told him. Somebody must have said
They
something.
had to have.
They must have sent it as a part of his bio when they dropped him off.
It might
Yeah,
have.
did they do something like that? Like what Scientology does? Do they do a like
They do,
audit?
yeah,
like
because
an audit.
it starts with this induction meeting. You go, they tell you kind of like, basically you show up, you get screamed at, then you go to this like first meeting where they kind of explain to you halfway the rules about how you need to do all this shit, we're going to punish you.
Yeah.
But then what happens is that you get attached to that big brother, right? You have that person that's walking through the program, and they're pumping you, acting like they're like commiserating with you
Right,
and
and
getting
then
to
you
know
get all
you.
the info.
Yeah, and then they get all the compromat.
Gotcha.
Well, Richie had a file folder an inch thick that was supposedly full of evidence. He's waving around. Here's the proof.
I need to start doing that in the office more.
Yeah. Well, we just open it up. It's just a bunch of menus. Yeah, we know.
And other students were told to break Skakel down until he copped to the murder. And after the screaming and slamming and spitting that always happened during general meetings didn't do the trick, Skakel was forced into the aforementioned ring. After 8 rounds of never-ending boxing opponents, Skakel kinda admitted to the murder by saying, "I don't know," when asked if he killed Martha Moxley.
According to my little police interrogation videos, that's how you know you got him.
Yeah.
Oh, is that
Once you
right?
start moving the needle.
All you got to do is add a 2-letter word, if.
All you have to do is talk to a man in an enclosed room for 12 hours, and then
Oh,
eventually
yeah.
they will just fold. That seems to be mostly, unless they're a true psychopath.
Just don't
Or
do
just
it.
call a lawyer.
Call a lawyer.
Call a fucking lawyer. Say nothing, especially if you're innocent.
Well, after that, Joe
Very
Ricci
nice.
institution. No, it's. That's
I mean, if you're
important
guilty,
for
you could
everyone
also
to hear.
just admit.
Just call
If you
a
are
lawyer.
guilty, you could save me the tax dollars.
That
just
would
to
be
get
nice.
silly.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, you don't have to pay for the private.
It'll be easier,
yeah.
get less time.
Yeah,
But if you're
it's-
not guilty.
I should be allowed to visit one prison cell a day and ask them to sing me a song, right? For the tax money.
You get that? All right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
That's
can help.
gonna-
That actually might help.
Yeah.
might, yeah.
I would love to see who would be singing after an hour of you in a jail cell. Yes.
Me just getting fucking railed.
Yeah.
Well, after the half confession, Joe Ricci instituted long-term punishment. Skakel was, quote, shot down, meaning he was stripped of all privileges, he had his shoes taken away, and he was forced to scrub floors and trash bins day and night.
I will say this, Mr. Parks. It does remind me of a punishment that you have given before.
Well, okay.
So Butterball was a bong, and Butterball
no, we
fell on
know.
the
You
ground.
took the man's
and then you took
shoes.
the man's shoes and made him walk home barefoot at night. Very interesting indeed.
I regret taking the man's shoes. I was actually thinking about this a couple of days ago. I've been reflecting lately. You know,
Good.
I turned 40, so you want to reflect upon your life a little bit.
I don't want to. I'm not looking
I
back.
thought and it was one of those things like, shouldn't have taken that guy's shoes.
Butterball, you did like Butterball the bong.
I did. It was the best bong that ever existed in the history of man.
Did he ever fucking break another bong?
I don't know.
We don't know.
He didn't return for his shoes.
No,
That's
he
for
never
goddamn
came
sure.
back.
That's what he gets.
I told him he could come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
I told him you can
You
come back
gave
tomorrow
him-
and get
you-
your shoes.
you gave him the opportunity.
Maybe he stepped on a needle and got hepatitis and died. We just don't know.
He might have. That's what I feel bad about. He had to take the train home with no shoes.
That's kind of on him.
He might still be homeless.
That was just the first chunk, but I feel bad about taking that guy's shoes.
If
I
you're
shouldn't have
wearing
done that.
$1 million suit, but you have no shoes, people are like, poor guy.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you're a super holistic fucking billionaire.
Could be.
Well, for weeks, Michael Skakel was also forced to wear a sign that said, "Confront me on why I killed Martha Moxley."
That's a great. Can someone make that T-shirt?
Oh, God.
And in Alon school tradition, he was forced to read the sign aloud before every meal. Like everyone who wore a sign, like the person who had like, "I am an I'm an emotionally unstable monster," they'd have to stand up and say that before every single meal, and they'd all go around and read their signs, and then everyone could eat.
Okay.
And additionally, students were encouraged to constantly confront students like Michael who wore signs. And one student allegedly asked Skakel,
"How does it feel to beat a girl to death with a golf club?"
Hyper specific.
Oh, yeah. No, they got a lot of information. It seems I feel like somebody in the family told what was going on.
And what did he say?
"I don't know."
Yeah, he just went,
Yeah.
But Skakel was eventually released from the Alon school and was returned to the world of the wealthy.
I'm sure he's totally well adjusted now.
He spent decades free until several investigations, including one conducted by Mark Furman.
"Oh, yeah, that guy."
He's an actor.
Does he doesn't have a, because it's the guy that.
It was the O.J. Simpson
Oh,
man
yeah,
who
you
took
know,
the stand.
yeah, of course, of course. He's an actor now?
No, that's what he said,
what he said.
regarding the testimony
yeah.
when he was
All of the
acting
racials.
like an LAPD officer.
That's what, this is just a character I play.
Yeah.
acting.
Well, they gathered enough evidence for an arrest and a trial. Like, he actually went on trial for this 2001.
Wow.
Yeah. The story of what most likely happened to Martha Moxley was finally revealed. On the night of the murder, the Skakels had a new 23-year-old tutor named Ken Littleton. It was his first night, but instead of tooting, he got blackout drunk with the Skakel brothers.
Tooting is the verb form of tutors.
Yes.
No, I do know that, but maybe he was tooting some cocaine.
Maybe, probably. Yeah.
Now, Ken was absolutely a suspect, and he was interrogated again and again, but he was never arrested or charged, even though, according to the Skakel family, Ken Littleton is the real killer.
Okay, so that's kind of how they did it, right? It's how they kind of rationalized it amongst themselves.
Well, it seems like a perfect scapegoat.
Well, they had a private investigator that says, your son killed it. And they'd be like, what if it was a guy standing next to my son?
Yeah.
Rise from your grave.
Now, Michael Skakel was sent to the Alon school after the murder because of his drinking and drug use, as we said. Actually, it was about 2 years after the murder that he got sent. But according to various students who testified at the trial, Michael didn't mind talking about the murder. Both Michael Skakel and a fellow student named John Higgins, they were night owls. Night owls, that's Alon school slang for guards that kept watch over other students at night to keep them from running away.
The one that would flash a light on them every hour to make sure that they were in bed and asleep.
Got you. Yeah, that's not going to wake them up or anything. That's
The whole
gonna be
point
really
was to
nice.
do that, and then you'd wake up and then you'd break the rules and you get a general meeting.
Right.
While on night owl duty, Higgins said that Skakel admitted to the murder of Martha Moxley in a roundabout sort of way. Specifically, Skakel said that he remembered getting drunk and remembered taking the golf club with him to run in the woods, which is weird.
Yeah, of course.
It's a weird thing to do.
Everyone does that.
That's what I do.
Everyone does it.
But Skakel said that he blacked out soon after entering the woods and therefore had no memory of the murder itself.
Technically, this sounds very similar to what Tiger Woods said to absolve himself of his many affairs. I was just in the woods with my club.
Leave Tiger alone.
Well, another Alon student named Gregory Coleman, who was an inmate at a prison in Rochester, New York at the time of the trial, Alon school didn't really work for him. He also had some...
Or maybe it institutionalized him and he's like, this is actually a step up.
It's great.
It might.
He also had some things to say about Skakel. Coleman claimed that Skakel openly said that he got away with murder because he was a Kennedy, or close enough where it didn't make a difference.
And he was right.
I hate these assholes so much.
Furthermore, Coleman also said that Skakel bragged about using a golf pun. He said he drove her skull. You get it? Drive the skull?
I got it. Yeah, did he putt her nose?
Well, what a putz.
Wow.
He said because Martha refused his advances. And when her body was found, her pants were pulled down, but there was no evidence of rape. But Skakel also allegedly said that he masturbated on Moxley's corpse.
That's not a brag.
But that's the thing, is that this is why I don't really believe Gregory Coleman, because, you know, he said it happened in a blackout. I don't think a teenager in a full blackout is going to masturbate on the corpse and then clean up the corpse where there's absolutely no evidence of any sort of semen or anything like that.
Unless he wasn't blacked out.
Yeah.
I think that he wasn't blacked out and he did it all on purpose, yeah.
Yeah.
Even Joe Ricci ended up testifying as far as Skakel's confessions went. But on the other side of Elan testimonies, students testified that the atmosphere at Elan was so horrific that kids could be coerced into saying anything.
Absolutely true. That's completely
anything.
true.
Absolutely.
And then there's also a little bit of a nihilistic edge. I believe that he did confess truly, but there's also a little bit of being like, yeah, I fucking killed her. Like, because people have told you and you've been around this dead girl and you're a Kennedy, so you think that you're above everything as it is. And so in a weird converse way, you then adopt it to be like more like, I don't know, like it's why people do false confessions in prison all the time. And so if you're already there, if you're already fucked up, you're in this scenario, it makes you appear to be more of a badass, quote unquote, to these people.
It's very bizarre.
So, but that's the thing. Otherwise, I think it's fully premeditated.
Yeah, it's like that most recent story of that chick who wanted to get some club and be like, Mom was a serial killer with my dad. And it's like, no, you weren't. Why the hell would you lie about that?
Because it's
very weird.
We're going to do a whole series on false confessions.
It's very bizarre.
You think this murder was premeditated?
I think that he had a golf club with him in the woods.
Yeah.
And so I think that there was a coercion with this girl and he brought her out there. Maybe God knows like how it led to blah, blah, blah. But then I think that he just straight up, she said no and he beat her to death with the golf club.
It's like he, what is that movie? Not The Strangers.
Because he brought the golf club from home. They brought that's the thing.
Did.
That's the difference. It'd be different if there was like the
woods weren't behind his house?
No. Well, they were close.
They were like next door neighbors. They were like woods in between.
But still, you don't bring there's no reason to bring the golf club. If you were going to
beat a squirrel to death.
If it was a crime, this is like gross, but if it was a crime of passion, he would have used something that was around him in his environment. He would have used a stump or like a rock or something, but because he brought something, that to me makes it premeditated.
Yeah, it's funny games, right? That's the one with the rich kids who break into that house.
They play the games. Yeah,
it's scary.
Now, in the end, Skakel was found guilty. He was found guilty of murdering Martha Moxley 27 years after the murder. He spent 11 years in prison, but he eventually won an appeal in 2013, due in part to the efforts of his cousin, famed anti-vaxxer and all-around disappointment, RFK Jr.
I don't know what you're talking about. This is just my voice, my love, my strong DNA.
I hate that dude.
He's a fucking piece of shit.
Everyone hates RFK.
He still thinks Sirhan's innocent. He's fighting for his release.
Whatever.
God, he's such a disappointment.
What created those broken? They're all weak.
I would imagine
years of incest.
I would imagine the explosion of the John F. Kennedy's head, and
But even JFK was weak. His body was.
He got hurt in a war.
He was
he
decomposing.
wasn't weak. He was a veteran. He
got hurt in a war.
Decomposed. Oh, hurt in a war. Please.
He was a wounded warrior, Ben.
He was.
I am not.
He was a hero.
What do you got against Kennedy?
Yeah, John F. Kennedy was the one like vaguely good one.
We did our entire bit at the Nashville show about the presidents. There's only been 4 presidents assassinated, and that's too bad. And he was. I said I like my presidents with brains in their head.
Yeah, no, I think it's very.
He was very bad. Marilyn. He used to taunt Marilyn, run her all around.
Was like
a horrible person.
A bad person. Yeah.
But he was president.
That's what I have against him. What do you mean? What do I have against that?
I'm not pro Kennedy, but I'm saying that yes, I think that this was an issue. His head just exploding randomly the way that it did, because we know for a fact nobody shot Kennedy.
Yeah,
you know,
just did that.
Yeah,
it was suicide. I say that. Also, they tried to put the top up, but it kept on hitting the back of his head. That's why they had to put the top down. Anyway, these jokes are great in 1963. 1964? Whatever.
63. But, it was the end of 63, so they would have continued.
You had taken to January.
Michael.
Had some awesome material on JFK in 64.
Well, Michael Skakel was released. And as of October 2020, no plans to retry him. He's out. He's done. It's over.
Yeah, I wonder. It was very bizarre that Jackie.
I wonder who his booker is.
Yeah, well, we'll get him. He and Hinckley are going to start performing together. The Jackie O's first words after JFK got shot were "Soup's on." That's good.
Bridge too far, my friend.
No, that's not a bridge too far. How is it a bridge too far?
I just,
it was 90 years ago.
It was a long time ago.
I'm not saying a bridge too far as in like it's offensive.
It's a bridge too far is just like it's just not a fantastic.
It's not good. No, I know it's not. Uneaten carrots.
Yes, go back. That was the beginning of this whole thing where we were all on the same page.
God.
Now, Skakel's trial brought quite a bit of negative attention to the Elan school, especially after witness Gregory Coleman admitted that he once spanked a girl so much that she urinated and defecated all over herself.
Jesus Christ.
But what put the final nail in the coffin for the Elan school? The internet.
Yep.
As more people got access to message boards and the like, stories from Elan school survivors began to circulate and get attention, and enrollment dropped further. In fact, one of the earliest subreddits, back in 2005 when Reddit was founded, it was dedicated to Elan school survivors.
Because they were being told for years that they were nuts.
Yeah.
And that everything happened to them didn't happen to them. And they were a part of some great thing. And it took a generation of people to kind of wake up and understand, like, oh, we were abused by an entire industry that was behind it.
Yeah, Reddit did good work here.
Yeah, and by 2010, dozens of forums were run by those same people. They organized petitions, and they had people call representatives demanding that Elan be shut down. But of course, it wasn't the government that shut down the school. Rather, the Elan school shut its doors itself in 2011.
Yeah, bro.
Wow.
Despite the fact that Maine had renewed Elan's accreditation until 2014.
So you're telling me Elan schools shut down 3 years after we ended racism? With the election of Barack Obama? Wow. That is honestly, that's disheartening in some ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
2011?
2011.
Good God.
But Joe Ricci wasn't around to see the end of his beloved hellhole. He'd already died of lung cancer 10 years earlier in 2001 as a multimillionaire, a self-made martyr who never faced a single meaningful consequence for his actions or for his part in helping to create the troubled teen industry.
And would you fucking believe I get up to heaven, St. Peter's like, just too fucking Italian to be saved?
Too Italian.
And I was like, what is even? Are barring clouds mostly gnocchi?
They are. Yeah, you can just see him being sad he missed 9/11.
I wanted to be there.
One day, that was the one day I wanted to be alive.
See, Elan technically never violated any laws.
Because it was all legal.
It's almost like laws don't mean morality.
There's a difference between legal and right.
Yeah. And they never ran afoul of investigators in Maine, even though other states did stop sending their schools in after their own investigations. It was either Indiana or Illinois. Probably Illinois, let's be fair here.
It was probably them saving their own ass.
Yeah. Well, they just saw that it was horrific.
Horrible.
They're like, you can't send kids there. The only reasons why Elan shut down was because of public pressure and because it wasn't making good money anymore. And these places still exist all over the country. In fact, the Agape School that we mentioned in the first episode when talking about teen escort companies, it is officially and voluntarily closing its doors tomorrow.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, dude, it's happening.
January 20th, 2023.
And isn't that a nice birthday gift to you?
See, they did it for you.
Wow.
He could have used the gift or some money.
Yes. So far, Marcus's gifts have been David Crosby's body,
dying.
which is very sad.
Yeah, very sad.
And this school's closing down.
Yeah, that's
So
nice.
one for the other. And then there's a bunch more. There's Tobin World, which was investigated and it was condemned by the United Nations for torture of its students. That was closed. That was in Glendale here in California. That was in 2019 when that was
Wow.
closed.
It was condemned by the United Nations.
Said that it was a center of torture for children. They kept it open because it was a private venture and all you have to do is sign a waiver and let the kids go. There was Judge Rotenberg Educational Center, which I brought up, which is still fucking open. It is to this day. It was changed. So it used to be called the BRI, the Behavior Research Institute of California. It was made, and again, this was used to specifically break down the child machine to be something else. And they would take away your food. They would zap you. They would beat you. And then the restraints, which we're also going to find is a big thing. That's still open. And they changed the name, Judge Rotenberg. They changed it because Judge Rotenberg was the guy that went to bat for them to keep them open because basically he had kids in the program.
What a piece. So he was sending kids to the program as a kickback program.
Yes.
Oh no, the kickback. This entire industry is
all
rife.
kickbacks.
It's all
Disgusting.
kickbacks.
Yeah.
All
Oh, yeah.
kickbacks and campaign contributions. That's the whole fucking thing. And in fact, that them changing the name, it still is a very common tactic amongst the troubled teen industry.
Right.
They get into trouble, they just change the name. They don't even have to move. They just change the name, and it's like fucking synthetic marijuana. You change one fucking ingredient, and spice is suddenly legal again.
Now it's just back to it. There's the Senecor Foundation, another group that, as I believe, was closed in, was this 2010s? Nope, still open. The Senecor, same thing. So the same shit.
Senecor.
It is a rehabilitation program that also does a wilderness shit as well. You also have Sea-Doo, which is what Paris Hilton was a part of.
Yeah.
Sea-Doo is a mini spider-legged version of it. That also continues to be open and send kids from one level to the next. So that starts at this sort of like low-level version of rehabilitation, and then you go into the wilderness program where you're really fucked. So this stuff is still very much an active part of the American system. Like, we have a lot of these. And kids are dying each year. More kids have died in 2011 to now than in the first 3 decades of the troubled teen industry.
I would say more kids have been reported to have died.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And these kids are all like, and they're all died. The same thing. It's restraint. It's this thing where they're like, they put them in a prone position. It's a lot of what we're seeing with police brutality.
It's like Eric Garner. It's that type of murder.
They tie someone's hands behind their back. They put them face down on the ground and they kneel on them, or they hold their hands down, and they quote unquote, that's supposed to be a humane way to restrain somebody. But a lot of times, if you're on some form of psychotropic drug trying to handle your mental illness, when you're in that position, it can actually make it very easy for you to throw up. So a lot of times you are throwing up, and then you're choking on your own vomit in this position, and it's still just so prevalent.
Yeah, and it's really disgusting the way they named that institution after Jim Morrison.
It is sad.
Really
Jim Morrison didn't choke on his own vomit.
All right, that's very depressing the way they named that institution after Jimi Hendrix or River Phoenix
Well,
or Edgar Allan Poe.
That is a professional. The joke bombs just switches around.
What's the name of somebody else who vomited on their own? Chris Farley, maybe he would have died of the overdose, but he also puked in his own mouth.
He was up, his face up when he died.
Yeah, that's how you choke.
No, but this is how these guys face down, face mushed in the ground.
You can die a whole series of ways.
Yeah, I mean, there are dozens more still operating. Utah and Texas are 2 very big states for these fucking places.
The seed is still around too.
A New York Times article released just 3 months ago featured testimony from 6 kids who have been treated in the exact ways we've described and worse. Because now it's starting to really pop into the transgender community. There are a lot of people sending transgender kids to these fucking places to shock and beat it out. I mean, it's
so fucked.
It's human rights abuses 101.
Oh,
it's fucking horrific.
We've been talking about that on Top Hat. It's coming from the legislative branch now. It is just absolutely disgusting.
Now, in 2007, Congress decided to investigate the troubled teen industry because of so many reports of abuse and because of all the deaths. There's a lot of deaths.
Yeah.
I mean, like 3 kids have died in troubled teen facilities since 2016. The last was just a couple years ago in 2020. It was
I'm looking at this huge ass list.
Yeah. But predictably, Congress concluded that it was impossible to determine the true extent of the industry's problems because of inconsistent regulation and reporting. Those are features, though. Those are not bugs of the troubled teen system.
Too big to fail. They gave it's the too big to fail thing where it's like, what are we going to do?
The thing is, you go into these places, these kids are screaming, and it's like, I can't even think straight.
Yeah, it's too confusing to prosecute, basically. They're basically throwing up their hands and saying like, ugh, God, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. It's so hard. Right. So hard.
It is hard.
And legislation to reform the troubled teen industry failed repeatedly, even though, and this might not, I wouldn't say even though, I'd say probably because of the fact that millions in public funds, taxpayer money, goes to fund these monstrosities.
So we're all complicit.
Yay! It's like they cultivized all of us.
Yeah. But things might be changing, if ever so slowly. Of all people, fucking Paris Hilton.
Dude, she's a different person than who she portrayed herself on television.
She very much is.
She's kind of like she's intense.
She would adopt chihuahuas and then not take care of them.
Well, it's different. She was a poor dog owner in her past.
Okay. Yeah. Well, she was a survivor of the CEDU school, and her and other patient-turned-activists have lobbied Congress to pass tougher regulations, and these efforts have actually been met with some success on the state level. In 2021, Utah, perhaps the state with the most active troubled teen institutions, as far as I can tell, they passed legislation limiting restraint and seclusion, while also increasing funding for abuse investigations. So that's something.
Yeah, it is something. I mean, it's a little bit like baked Doritos.
Yeah, but
it's slightly healthier. But if you eat a whole bag, you're still going to get obese.
It's just getting you there. It's like, again, in this country, in order for us to erase the generations of violence that we allow to happen due to money, like sometimes it just takes a second for them to be like, but are you sure? Yes. Are you sure we want it? But listen, before, like, I know we've wasted, like, are you sure? Like, they want to do it, and then they're like, you slowly roll it back. Like, eventually they will realize that drugs are won the war.
Yeah, and of course, we support Paris Hilton in this effort. If she can have her Dee Snider moment. She's going for the Congress.
That'd be great.
It'd be awesome.
I'd love to see that, yeah. Well, in Oregon and California, children that were previously sent to out-of-state facilities, they were taken back, kids from the welfare system. Oregon and California were just sending these fucking kids out, like foster kids out to these places.
Oh, man.
And that at least puts the smallest financial pressure on the industry to tamp it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because California especially is a pretty big market, although California can just send it in-state.
Yeah. I don't think we built a new school here in a long time, like universities, but the prisons are popping up all over the place.
So, while the troubled teen industry will seemingly always have a place in American society, we can all do our part to make that place smaller. As is evidence, the only thing that works to get these places shut down is public pressure, which hits them in the only place they care about, their wallet. So spread the word. These places don't work, they never have worked, and they never will work. It is a travesty that they still exist anywhere. And the more we talk about it, the less of a chance there'll be that the next generation gets sent. And if no one gets sent, then these places will eventually choke out and they'll die the death that they all deserve.
There you go. I completely agree. Thank you all so much for listening to our series on the troubled teen industry. They've done nothing but create chaos and ruin lives, and it makes for an unhealthy society.
Kids need to be reached the way it always needed to, has always been done.
Through
a
candy.
singular rap done by a white woman teacher at a talent show. That is the only way to reach these kids.
I understand. I get it. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
But what a story. So you want to tell people all over, because we have like many sources. There was many sources in this whole saga.
Definitely. All right. Well, our source on Joe Ricci is a book called Duck in a Raincoat by Maura Curley.
This is the cutest name ever for a horrific story. I want a duck in a raincoat.
Yeah.
And of course, we had, like the rise and fall of Synanon, Help at Any Cost. Those were both invaluable resources for the last couple of episodes. We also used a lot of articles. We used Suffer the Little Children by Suzuki Nathi. We used Ex-Students Describe Elan School by David Gurliaki via Portland Press Herald. We used His Family Asks What Really Happened at Elan School by Catherine Skelton and Lindsay Tice. We had The Day Officer Smiley Helped a Boy Escape Elan School, also by Catherine Skelton and Lindsay Tice. We have Trial of Guilt by Dominique Dunn. Dominique Dunn, he was also greatly involved in the O.J. Simpson trial. He's the father of the actress who was murdered by her boyfriend.
Yes, from Poltergeist.
From the girl from Poltergeist. Yeah, he's her father.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's what we have, yeah.
Damn, yeah. But no, we went in deep. Next week we're probably gonna get a little bit silly before we get serious. Not too serious.
Not too serious.
But the next big series we're gonna do is a long-awaited update, and I'm very, very excited because we're coming for them again.
Yeah, well, I don't want to blow the cover, guys, but it's all going to be on the Burger King Kids Club.
Do you guys remember?
What have they been up to?
I heard
and what did they do?
You know what was the worst thing is that I heard the kid in the wheelchair could fucking walk.
What?
Yep.
Isn't that fucking fucked up?
Yep.
Think about that.
And there was a character
Who's covering
named
up?
Q. Wasn't the guy with the glasses called Q? Well, this is why we're going to get into it.
Yeah, finally. We're going to figure out all their names over an hour and a half long episode.
Well, they named the guy that you were referencing Wheels.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was simple.
A little on the nose there.
But we're going to do a big update on a previous series, but we're also, before that, we're going to do a fun history series that I can't wait for. The Whaler's Life for Me.
Yeah,
it's
you're
a
gonna like
Whaler's Life for Me.
Hope you like hooks.
I love hooks. Oh, we should cover the invention of the silly buddy. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you, guys. Make sure you check out Whiz Brew and Page 7 at the Release the Butthole Cut. They're in Dallas, Texas at the Addison Improv January 25th. And they are at Emo's in Austin, Texas on January 27th.
Nice.
Go and check them out. Take a gander. Wish Marcus a happy 40th.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. And to all the survivors out there, keep on doing your best and hang in there. And
Please do.
congratulations on all your progress. And this shit you never deserved it in the goddamn first place.
You never literally, I feel like that's really important. You never deserved it. It was never your fault.
Does.
You shouldn't have been there.
Nope.
All right, everyone. Hail yourselves.
Hail Satan.
Again.
Magustalations.
Tell me, if I was king of the world, I'd free every child. I'd free every child.
It's actually quite scary.
Free
I
every,
free
free
every
every
child.
child to do what?
I free him to go
Let's
to
just end
heaven.
that. We're just going to end that.
Every child should be an angel.
Yeah.
It's the only way they freeze.
Great.
Sure. Let's just cut it.
This show is made possible by listeners like you. Thanks to our ad sponsors, you can support our shows by supporting them. For more shows like the one you just listened to, go to lastpodcastnetwork.com.